Hello, motherfuckers. Is it better? Is it fixed? I'm going to go bananas if you tell me it's not fixed. Is it picking up the mic? It's fixed. Praise be to the gods of YouTube who can't even figure out how to allow you to change an analog plug within the stream, and you have to end it and start again. You know what the funniest thing is? When I tried to start again, it took a picture of me. Like I was mid trying to fix it, and my webcam took a picture of me, and it became the thumbnail by default. I didn't give my consent for this shit. What is this bullshit? Is this YouTube punishing me because I'm not making content? Are you guys in on this? What happened here? I started the stream, and the stream just refused to pick up the mic. And since the audio of the webcam is total garbage, yes, total garbage. It's not like I was going to just stream for 3 hours and tell you guys story that's horrible to listen to, because I also want to think about the people who are going to be rewatching this afterwards. Like, I know that there are a ton of people, their Sunday afternoon routine is they listen to the story time, and I want them to have the best quality possible. So fuck it, we're back. Doesn't change anything. I went in, I deleted the other stream, we're good. All right. And now I'm like I'm amped. So this is good because it pissed me off. And so now I'm full of energy, and the story time is going to be even better. How is the new school thing going? It's tremendous. Strategists, seekers. I'm working with 15 people who study philosophy and literature with me. I'm taking care of roughly 30 people for the School of Strategy, and I'm onboarding more people. So it's my new job. And honestly, I fucking love it. I wake up every day excited to work. I go to bed every night at 1 a.m. and I'm like, I have forced myself to go to bed because I just want to keep working. It's probably the best choice I've ever made in my life, honestly. If you decided to leave the US, where would you go? Maybe Switzerland. Yeah. I would go back to Europe. That's the certainty. Cut your hair. No, you're not my mom. She keeps trying to tell me to cut my hair because she says I look homeless. And she might be right, but I will keep the hair. Motherfucker is rich. I mean, Switzerland, if you have family there, it's you don't have to have that much money to immigrate. Never France. I'm never coming back to France. Ever got headaches from neck training? No, but if you do, I recommend using bands. They tend to mitigate. You do look homeless. Well, thank you for that. What did you study in college? Well, that's going to be the topic of one of the stories today. Is it fine to ask a dating-related question? Ask away. The first part of this is going to be a Q&A. Whatever you do, never come to the UK. I have no intentions. Your cuisine is garbage. I will never go there. Are you concerned about what's happening in the US, or should we not let it affect us mentally? I don't have any control over it. I'm just some lowly immigrant. The best I can do is do my best. I think that too many people are just destroying their own lives thinking what will happen tomorrow. You'll see what happens tomorrow and then you'll react. French food isn't much better. Anything is better than UK food. If I take cardboard and I just soak it in toilet water and I put it in a plate, it's better than UK food. But I do agree that Asian food is plus plus. It's my favorite type of food personally. Come to Greece. Greece sounds nice and it's very warm. Hello from Kazakhstan. Hello. You guys have a very competitive chess over there. Fish and chips is decent. English breakfast is decent. Apple pie, you guys didn't invent apple pie. Come the fuck on. It reminds me of the stream last time where someone was trying to claim that kebab was German. Come the fuck on. Come to Scandinavia. Scandinavia would be nice. Norway, especially. How is the rice farm training going? I can't do it anymore. I don't have enough time. I have to pick it up again because I do want to make that video for you guys, but I only want to make the video if I'm able to complete 90 days non-stop of rice farm training. Yeah, apple pie is American. They have a song that's 19 minutes long about apple pie, and the day the music died. The Beatles never made that song. I live in Norway. Like the stream, guys. Don't like it yet. That way, when we do the stories and I tell you, hey, 50 likes, 100 likes, we can get to it. French is just mid. You're wrong. Do you cook the rice afterwards? Does it make it taste better? No. But I do have a little anecdote for you guys where I don't know where it is in my office right now, but I have a pillow that is full of white rice that I stuffed because I had back problems back then. So I would use the pillow to put it on my lumbar spine. And the rice that's in there is almost 7 years old. So I wonder what would happen if I took it out and I ate it. Because it's being soaked with my sweat and all of my juices. By the way, if anyone is interested, I sell the pillow for like $500. Who's interested? You would die. Nah. How can I ask my cousin for a date? Well, first off, you take her mudding, then you sing "Sweet Home Alabama," and then you ask her for a date. I suppose that this is, in a way, a stereotype. Yes. You still watch Rich Piana videos from time to time? Of course. I rewatch Road to Bigger. That's me. I'm confusing myself with Rich Piana. That's how much of a fanboy I am. I rewatch Bigger by the Day all the time. How many lunatics do you think there are who will keep a bucket of rice around? I think it's fairly common. Actually, you don't need to be a lunatic. If you're Asian, most likely you keep your rice in an open bag somewhere in the kitchen anyways. So bucket or like bag, it doesn't make any difference. What are your thoughts on the Trend Twins? I have no idea. I don't watch them. I thought you were going to stream more. Me too. But surprisingly, streaming takes time. Bodybuilding as a martial art, explain. Well, I don't know. Don't bombard me with questions like this. What is your favorite request you got on coffee? I get some pretty reasonable stuff on coffee. You mean like in terms of programs? Every single program request that I get is fun because it's always a new challenge for me. Do you work 8-hour days on the score? No, I work much more than that. I work from the time I wake up around 9 a.m. to the time I go to bed at 1 a.m. Do you think a sand bucket would work as good? You're not wasting food. Well, it would be very abrasive, so it would not be like very comfortable on your hands, and you would most likely get cuts, and it would really dry out your hands. Are we getting a new streaming schedule? Maybe for March. Yeah, I hope I'm going to be able to stream once again, at least in February. What advice would you give someone who's paralyzed by program hopping and cannot commit to a training style because of so much contradictory info? Stop consuming information on YouTube and just stick to a style. Almost every methodology works if you just do it long enough. My skin is trash, so that's good to know. Yeah, don't do that. Are the philosophy streams going to slow down since you are teaching people literature in the school of strategy? Well, that's part of it. Right? I spend 2 to 3 hours every single day teaching philosophy, and I also spend 2 to 3 hours a day reading philosophy. So the occurrence of philosophy streams is going to, of course, be lesser, but I still want to keep it going. But at the same time, I think that if I put out like 3-hour-long philosophy streams, even just once a month, that's already a lot of content. Thoughts on a mini cut for someone in my position? Yeah, remember your physique, jacked and stoic. Yeah, mini cuts can never really hurt per se, but you're young, so don't do too many of them. Have you dropped anyone from the score yet? No, people drop themselves. So they realize that it's not what they wanted, or they realize that it's just a waste of their money, so they drop. Which is the point, by the way. This is the reason why it's so flexible. What do you think about partials? I like partials. Like partials for forearms, I really enjoy. I do partials for biceps, also on the preacher curls. And then there are other exercises where I'll always do for range of motion just because it feels better. Is tuna a good source of protein? It's an excellent source of protein. You just have to watch for the mercury content. So no one's going to talk about the crustacean feet. And look at this. It's not just crustacean. It's also agrumes and olives. I'm representing every single culture here. Do you watch UFC when it's interesting? So today's fight, for example, I don't give a fuck about. What's the right way to do the croc row? There's no wrong or right way, but there are a few pointers. First, weight in front of the body, so not inside of the body. 2, pronated wrist, so you don't want to be semi-supinated. And lastly, you want as vertical of a torso as possible without doing a shrug. Visit Albania. Okay, what am I supposed to visit there? Do you supplement zinc, magnesium, or vitamin D? Vitamin D because I live in a place where there is no sun. How to deal with tennis elbow from chin up? You have to warm up properly with tricep isolation exercises. And then I made a tendonitis guide that you can go check out. Je me rapproche de mes concours de prépa. Est-ce que tu as des conseils? Yes, make sure that you keep training. If you are taking exams, just 15 minutes a day is going to really help your brain capacity. Don't make the mistake of thinking, oh, it's time that I should invest somewhere else. What's that joint supplement you like to use? MSM powder, an absolute banger that tastes like total garbage. It's the stuff that we feed to horses to make sure that their ligaments and articulations stay strong. Favorite US state? Maine. I went to Maine one time and it blew my mind. And it's funny because every single person I met that was from Maine, when you tell them that, they're like, yeah, that's true, but don't tell it to other people. Like, it's this idea that it's like this sleeper state where it's incredible there, but they don't want too many people to know because they want to like have like still an affordable life and they don't want too many tourists. Yeah. Least favorite US state? New York State, easily. Maine is the best. Don't go there, please. Yeah. What do you like about Maine? Nature. Yeah. Like the cities were very historic. It was close to the sea, and I'm in love with the sea. Lots of nature. The people are very chill, but not in a chill like on the West Coast. It's like an East Coast vibe, but it's like a West Coast vibe on the East Coast. Also, it's also the beauty of like the Pacific Northwest, but without all the rain and without the people who live in the Pacific Northwest. So it's pretty nice. Why don't you like New York? I told the story last time. I detested the people there. Have you ever been to Canada? No, I wish. I want to go to Quebec one day, but the issue is that traveling is very difficult for me now. There are like lots of countries on my bucket list. I want to go to Japan. I want to go to Corsica. I want to go to Greece if I can. I want to go to Quebec, but hey, find the time and the money for that, right? Have you ever been to Middle Eastern country? No, but I would be interested as well. Do you think you'll ever run out of gym content ideas? No, I will run out of time, meaning that I have a list of 500 ideas, but it's a matter of finding the time to put them out. Upstate New York is beautiful. Well, I mean like New York, like New York City. I never went to upstate New York. Advice on having a flat-looking physique. Well, you have to build the thickness muscles, so the chest, the arm strings, the traps. Alex Leonidas spoke about all of that years ago. Has the score surpassed your old job from a satisfaction, stability, and income? Satisfaction, yes, very easily, because this is literally what I want to do with my life. Stability, no, because there's no stable income in what I'm doing right now. If tomorrow 50% of the people that I teach decide, hey, fuck that guy, well, I lose 50% of my income. But in terms of money making, yes, it's much more than I used to make. I'm not too attached to it. As long as I can pay the bills, I'm fine with that. I just want to help people, and then the rest will follow. Progress on the next Dune essay. The next Dune essay is already written, guys. It's been written for like a year. I just have to find the time to sit down, because the last essay, it took me 3 days to record, and then it took a full day, so like close to 15 hours to edit. That's the time that I have to find. What lift are you most proud of? I'm not really proud or not proud of any of my lifts, because I don't give a fuck about strength. But I'm really happy with how strong I am on bicep movements. Do you think your ultimate hypertrophy program are still fine? Yes, they are very much like still something that I would recommend 100% across the board. You spoke once about doing a Lord of the Ring video still on the schedule. Absolutely. I want to make a like 4-hour long video on the philosophy of Lord of the Rings, but it's the same issue as with Dune. It takes a lot of time. Okay, I think we are good. I think we're going to be able to begin the story time. So I'm going to give you guys your options, because there are a lot of options. So let's see. I almost clicked on end stream, which would have been an issue. So the choice and the selection you have to pick from is: one, why I hate Paris. So this is a general story of like a week I spent in Paris that was one of the worst weeks in my life, that like crystallizes why I detest that city and I never want to go back. There are the times where I almost died, and there are multiple selections that you can pick from. The day I almost died playing American football, the day I was almost eaten by sharks, when I almost bled out because I impaled my own hand like an idiot, and the day I almost froze to death. There is my first day in America. That's a long story on literally the first day I stepped foot in this country and all of the shenanigans that happened afterwards. Stories about my childhood, like little stuff, like when I almost killed a guy by pushing them off a cliff, like fun stuff, like light stuff. Then there is my hatred of haircuts. I know that you can't tell, but I have a difficult relationships with hairdressers, and you'll be able to understand why. My job working for the French government, this one is really, really good as well. I want to tell the ghost story again, because I have additional information. So the day where I saw a ghost, some of you guys already heard that story. Then there is my top social awkwardness stories. So the moments in my life where I was a spug, and it happens very often. And that's pretty much, oh, and last but not least, I got permission from the wife to tell a story that involves her. And this is a really, really good story as well. So it's we'll call it the life story, right? So let me know, guys. Which one do you want to start with? Okay, sharks, ghost, haircuts, life story, ghost, government, hate Paris, ghost, haircuts, sharks. haircut. I see a lot of haircuts. You guys are interested with the haircut? French job. Okay, let's start with the haircut. Let's start with the haircut. That's going to be a nice way to ease ourselves into this story time. So, the haircuts. I don't know how you guys relate to the action of getting your haircut, but my entire life has been this. My hair looks fine. My mom tells me I need a haircut. I get a haircut and I look like shit. And so every single time it's this cycle of I'm doing perfectly okay and the bullying is starting to subside. Then I have to get my haircut. I look like a dork and it just keeps going because for some reason in France, it was very fashionable for men to get a haircut literally every 2 months. And I never liked that because I liked having long hair, but it wasn't on the table. So it was this endless cycle of getting shitty haircuts. But a shitty haircut I can live with. You know, you look like garbage. It's okay. It's growing back. But I've been going through things with hairdressers where I don't know if it's me or if I'm just cursed. But my entire life, I've had shitty interactions with them. And it goes from shitty to like downright psychotic or even criminal behavior. So, in terms of criminal behavior, let me tell you guys the story of when I was, I think, something like 9 or 10 years old. I was very young. And my mom, who was busy, got me an appointment at a hairdresser that was like literally across the street. It was 5 minutes away. So I go there and they have my name and everything. So I sit in the chair. And I don't know how exuberant you are as a child. I was very timid and shy. So I wouldn't really speak up. I wouldn't really like be very vocal at all. I was the type of kid that you could sit me in a chair and come back an hour later. I'm still in the chair. So the woman puts me in the chair and she starts cutting my hair. And I noticed that she's being like pretty like violent in that she's not cutting my hair the way you should cut a child's hair, which is to be very patient and like say, please turn your head. Like she would, if I, because kids move, of course, if I was moving when she was cutting my hair, she would take the brush, like the brush for the hair, and she would smack me on the head with it. Like she wouldn't even say, oh, like stop moving, please. She would just smack me. And so I was just terrified in that chair, just completely unable to move because I was thinking, well, this woman has scissors very close to like arteries and things that are fairly vital, and she clearly is not a big fan of kids. So I was petrified. She keeps cutting my hair, and at some point, I noticed that there is some liquid that is slowly starting to trickle down my neck. And this liquid, at first, I think is water because, you know, they wash your hair and then like you're still like you have wet hair and they cut the wet hair. But soon enough, I realized that that's not water at all. That's blood. It's blood that's trickling down. And I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck is going on? Why am I bleeding? And so I do this. I reach with my hand behind my head and I go behind my ear and I look and my fingers are covered in blood. And I look at my fingers. I look at the mirror because, of course, I'm sat in front of a mirror, and I look at the hairdresser, and she has this like huge smile on her face, like she's cheesing at me, and I'm thinking like, what the fuck? And then as she cuts, I realize that when she goes around the ears, you know, you go around the ear to make the contour, as we say in French. She's essentially just stabbing. So she's stabbing and then cutting around, and like I'm 9. So I'm thinking like what do I even say? She's an adult. So in my head, it's like this weird thing going on where I'm thinking this can't be happening. Like I don't believe what I'm going through. And so I'm not moving. I'm waiting for the haircut to be done, and I'm just like bleeding on myself. And the haircut is finished. This woman removes like the thing that you have, the towel, whatever, takes my money because like I had money, takes more than what was owed because she took like a 20 euro bill and it was like 15, and she just pushes me out of like the shop. And I remember just walking the streets, people looking at me weird. No one intervened, of course. And I went back to my mom and I was like, Mom, like she tried to kill me. This woman is psychotic. And so my mom, of course, never sent me back to that place. She also spoke to all of the moms in the neighborhoods to say, hey, like never send your kid to that place. That woman is crazy. So I don't know what happened to that employee, but holy fuck, that was one of my first experiences with haircuts, which makes you understand why later on, when I was to go to get a haircut, I wasn't so happy about it. Experience number 2. This one was much less violent, but it was in a way more traumatic. My mom, how can I put it nicely? Because she does watch the streams. She is very crafty with her money, right? She makes very sound investments. So if a product is a euro and 20 cents and another is a euro and zero point 0.8 cents, we're getting the one that's 12 cents cheaper. That's a pattern. It's something that's happened my entire life. We didn't have much money growing up. I understand. The issue is that she also applied the same mindset to haircuts. So her thing was a good place for my son to get a haircut is the cheapest place possible. Usually, these tend to be places that are pretty shitty. There was an Asian haircut place that opened literally like down the street to us. These people just opened. Of course, we had no idea of like how good they were, but you could surmise that most likely not super good. Of course, my mom sends me there because it's like 7 euros to get your haircut. It's like if you go to a kebab and they say, oh, the kebab is 2 euros. You know that you're going to get rat meat. Like in this kebab is rat meat. You are paying for rat meat. Well, I got the rat meat of haircuts, meaning that this woman clearly had never cut hair, had no idea how to cut hair, didn't even speak French for the most part. So when I showed up, and I was at this point 12 or 13, and I showed her a picture of Itsugaya. People who have watched Bleach are already laughing in their chairs right now. Itsugaya is a character in Bleach that has that long, bleached, like spiky hair that is impossible to replicate in real life. But for some reason, I thought, hey, they're Asian. I guarantee you they can do that. So picture me, I'm 12, I'm a complete like dork showing up to the place where people don't even speak French with a picture of an anime character saying, do this. The woman takes it, says, yes, oui, 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 sits me in the chair, and she starts. What do you think happened? Do you think that I exited that shop with that haircut? Or do you think that she massacred me? She just went buck wild and just like cut randomly. Because of course, what the fuck was she supposed to do? She got a kid who has like straight spiky hair, black hair, who now wants like long, bleached white hair that's like flowing. Unless you're Japanese or Korean, that haircut is not possible. So I exited and I looked not like Itsugaya, I can tell you that. Who did I look like in Bleach? I don't know. Like there's that guy that like has cannons and he has no role whatsoever. I sort of look like him. There's also like the gay guy who's like friend with Madarame, the bald guy. I sort of look like him. Like she gave me like a bowl cut, but with like almost like a meat part. It was horrible. I go back to my mom. She looks at me. She says, "What the fuck is this?" Well, I say, "Well, what the fuck is this?" That's 7 euros. That's your investment. So she ended up having to cut my hair herself. So second haircut, second disaster. And this is why, from that point on, I only went to what is essentially like the great clips. I know that Americans know what I'm talking about of haircut places. It was called Fabio Salsa. Fabio Salsa is a chain of haircut places in France where, regardless of where you go in France, if you go to a Fabio Salsa, you will get the exact same haircut wherever you go. So it wasn't a good haircut, but at least it was something that I could predict. Like it wasn't going to shock me. So I went there all the time and my haircuts were shitty, but at least they weren't that terrible. Then I went to America. And in America, I decided, you know what? My mom is no longer there. I can do whatever I want. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my own hair. Translation, I'm going to do random stuff all the time. So, the first thing that I did is for my first year in America, I just didn't cut my hair at all. And so I looked again like a vagrant. And the vagrant thing is interesting because at some point I decided, okay, I'm done with this. I'm going to cut my own hair. Like this is the arc of like a few years where I was my own hairdresser. The thing was that I didn't have a place in my home because it wasn't really a home, it was dorms to cut my hair. It wasn't comfortable, there wasn't enough space. So what I did instead is I took all of my shit, my razors and all of the stuff that you need to cut your own hair, and I did it in the bathroom of the building where I used to work as a teacher. But of course, you can't do it in the middle of the day because if someone comes into the bathroom to take a shit and I'm there like bent over the sink cutting my own hair, I'm going to either get put on a list or I'm going to get fired. So what I did is I waited for 3 a.m. I was in my office and I waited essentially until everyone exited the building. And at 3 a.m., I went into the essentially the college bathroom of the building and I started cutting my own hair. Now, what is the problem with this plan? Chat, let me know. What is the issue? cleaners, CCTV. Yeah, if there had been CCTVs, I would have been fucked, but there was no security, so I was saved. Janitor, they were too cheap for that. You are not a hairdresser. That is going to be very relevant later. Lights, not a good plan. No one is able to tell. Like, you're cutting your hair in a public bathroom and you're trying to be sneaky about it. What is the issue? Drainage. Okay, if I'm a dumbass and I put my hair in the drain, then maybe there's a bunch of hair left. Yeah, look at my hair. Look how thick it is. It's impossible to get rid of all of the hair. So what I did is that I cut my own hair. I cleaned as best as I could. But the next day when I show up, what happens? Everyone is talking about the rumor that there is a homeless person that has broken into the building to cut their own hair. And now there's this rumor going around that there are like a gang of homeless people that use the bathroom and that live in the building. So now, by cutting my hair in the sink, I created this entire like panic and mass hysteria where people in the building are thinking that there's essentially like more people that live in the walls that come out at night to steal the cheese and to like take a shit in the sink. And I'm sitting there like slightly away from the group, and it's that meme of, oh, I fucked up, because now this is a thing. Now people are trying to find the culprit. And I'm lucky that they never found out that it was me, because I would have gotten in trouble. You'll see later that me getting in trouble with these people and with the administration of academia was a theme in my life, and I actually got fired at some point. And that's another story that I'm going to tell today. But that is when I started to give myself my own haircuts. So that is the incident in the sink. Then I started to do it at home because I didn't want, again, to be arrested. So now I do it at home. I clean as best as I can. But I also have developed a new, I don't know, call it a new whimsy, a new like, a new desire. Now I'm giving myself these like weird fades, or essentially the way I cut my hair is I take all of that portion, I put it on the side, and I just shave. So I just completely shave both sides of the head, and then I have this like weird little part that goes like around, which nowadays is like mostly known as a fash haircut. I didn't know that at the time. All I knew is that I was told that you are supposed to leave more on top and less on the side. I was fat as fuck, so I was trying to, in a sense, like cheat with the illusion. It's the only cut that I knew how to do, so I would keep doing that. And no one really told me anything. I got weird looks, but it didn't really register until the day where I gave myself that haircut again. And it was around the time Trump got elected the first time. And there was all of this like talk about like unsavory people walking the streets with certain flags and doing certain gestures with their hands that is becoming very relevant nowadays also. It's interesting how history is very cyclical. Well, I give myself the haircut that is now very much charged politically, and I show up to my bank because back then I needed to get a cashier's check to pay my rent. Guess who is my banker? I show up, and my banker is this like tiny Jewish guy who I've known for at this point for like years. And so I show up to his place and I'm like, give me a cashier's check. And the look on his face, like, he looked like he had seen a ghost, because in his head he put two and two together and he was like, okay, that guy is white. There's no fucking way he gave himself that haircut by accident. He knows what he's doing, and now he's showing to my place of work and asking for a cashier's check. Like, what is next? Like, is he going to tell me to jump on the train next? And I was completely oblivious to what was happening and why he was so stressed out. So he sort of like gestured someone else to come over, and it was like someone like a black, I think it was a black woman, and she took over, and she was incredibly mad at me and mean, and I didn't understand what the fuck was happening. And it's when I went home and I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, oh, now I get it. Now I understand the reactions. I do look like a Waffen SS, so I understand why they had that reaction. And this is from this point on that I decided to no longer cut my own hair, and I went back to a place to get professionals to cut my hair. And then it led to now the final stage of this entire saga, where I'm just not cutting my hair anymore. It's not worth it. I actually do like having long hair. I like tying it behind my head and having a bun. So this is the first story, and as always, it takes much longer to say that than I always envisioned. So we're going to be here for 3 hours, guys. So that was, oh, there's another one that I didn't say. Actually, there's 2 other stories about haircuts that I didn't tell you guys, and the 2 have to do with women. So the first one is the story of how I lost a relationship because of her haircut. It was New Year's Eve, I think, of 2017 or 2018, and I was in New York to spend New Year's with one of my friends. And one of the things that we had always spoken about is we wanted to give ourselves a mulet. Do you know what a mulet haircut is? Well, one of the running joke of our friendship was that one day we would give each other a mulet, and that is not a sexual innuendo. It's literally we would cut each other's hair. And for some reason, we decided at that point in history that this was it. This was going to happen now. And so we did it, of course, semi-drunk at 2 a.m. on New Year's Eve. And it was really, really bad. So the one that I gave him, honestly, props to me. I'm actually a pretty good hairdresser when I cut someone else's hair. It was decent. The one that he gave me was horrible because he essentially took all of my hair, pulled it up, and he just cropped the front and the sides. So it looked like nothing. Naturally, because it was a fun experience and we were semi-drunk, we took pictures and the pictures went on Facebook. And guess who saw the pictures? My girlfriend at the time, who was not super happy about seeing her boyfriend getting a random haircut in a bathroom in New York drunk. So I get that shitty haircut. I wake up the next morning with a mulet. And on top of that, I get a text message by my girl who says, "Hey, well done. I've seen enough of your shenanigans. I don't want to stay with you." So that's one. But you'll see that the quality of a woman can be directly assessed with her reaction to your shenanigans. So a few years later, the exact same thing happened when I was in a relationship with my current wife and my forever wife, by the way, not just current. And I made the same mistake. I gave myself a haircut, but this time I gave myself an accidental bowl cut. Do not ask me how I managed, but behind my head, I had like a straight line that was essentially a bowl cut, but I couldn't see it because it was behind my head. My wife, my then girlfriend and now wife, walks into the room and she was having a horrible week. She was like having issues left and right. She was very sad. She sees the bowl cut from the back and she just explodes in laughter. And she told me later on that like the fact that I gave myself an accidental bowl cut was in a sense very like essential in the relationship because like she like learned that I was like not so serious and very goofy and it's something that she enjoys. And so this was part of the reason why we ended up like going strong together. So you see the different reactions. One girl was like, this guy is cringe, this guy is like crazy, I don't want him. Another one was like, yeah, that guy is insane, but it's funny, so I'm going to stick with him. That's the quality that you're looking for in a girlfriend. That is wife material right there. So that is for the haircut. That is the story of the haircut. You have learned it all. Nice little introduction. Okay, what next? The wife story, the awkwardness story, the ghost story, the French government, my childhood, my first day in America, day I almost died, why I hate Paris. Which one? Awkwardness, life story, wife story, ghost story, government. Oh, it's all over the place. French government, shock. Can we see the wedding picture frame? Nope. Ghost story. If I speak like this, there's an echo. Echo. Paris. I kind of want to do Paris. Because Paris is a fun one. Okay. There's 300 people on the stream. Get 230 likes. And we'll do Paris. Let's do it. I'm waiting, guys. I'm waiting. Is the ghost story the same as the massive black thing? No, it's a completely different story. Do the likes bring you money also? No, it's just something that I do because it's fun. All right, let's do it. We'll do the time I got banned from a sushi place today as well. Don't worry about that. All right, so let's do the Paris story. So to give you context, because it's important to understand the story, I left Paris in 2016. Right, to pursue a better education in the US. And it's a story that I told in the previous story stream. If you didn't catch it, you can go back and find it in the description. Anyways, that's for the people who are going to catch it later. I never went back to Paris because fuck that. I didn't want to. But then eventually something forced me to go back. I had a family member very close to me who got sick with cancer, unfortunately. And because they were essentially on death's door, I had to come back to say goodbye. This was, of course, impromptu and not a very fun vacation. So when my wife told me, hey, I'm going to come with you for moral support, because, of course, she's a tremendous wife, I told her, fuck no, it's expensive as fuck to go to Paris. I'm not paying an extra $1,000. I'm going to be miserable anyways, might as well be miserable by myself. Of course, it wasn't a very popular decision in my household at the time, but I'm glad that I did it that way. You'll understand why. So I go back to Paris. Again, with this context in mind, I'm not there to have fun. Show up, arrive for the first time in my home country for more than 5 years. I immediately can sense the fucking negative vibe of these people. Like, Parisians exude this hatred and bitterness of life that you can feel in the airport. Like Charles de Gaulle, you can already feel like, oh, I entered a shitty country. You then have to take le périphérique, so it's the highway that is going to lead you to Paris. Naturally, it's gray, it's raining, there are garbage tags and graffiti everywhere, there are tents everywhere set by migrants, you see poverty and homelessness everywhere. It's horrible, right? It's the perfect, like, every time I make that trip, I think to myself, this is what tourists see the first time they arrive in Paris. Like, this is their introduction to the most beautiful city in the world. Is it any wonder why they don't want to come back afterwards? I mean, there is literally something called Paris syndrome in Japan, or Japanese people have this idea of Paris in their head, then they arrive in Paris, and the difference is so stark that they get PTSD from it. Right? It's that bad. Anyways, I wasn't surprised because I grew up there. So I arrive in Paris, and my vacation is essentially going to be to visit that person in the hospital and spend as much time as possible with them before they die. So that sets the tone of the entire trip. But that's not enough. Of course, it would be too easy if it was just this. So I also managed to pick the worst possible time to go back, because it was during the time of the grève. The grève is France's national sport. Essentially, what we do is we say, we want more, the government bad, blah. And so an entire portion of society just stops working. So sometimes teachers will just stop teaching for a month. Sometimes public transportation, which is already shitty originally when it works, stops working for a month. And when I went, it was one of the worst and most severe strikes in the history of France, meaning that the entirety of the subway was shut down, all buses were shut down, all trams were shut down. There was zero public transport in Paris. Zero. It wasn't that there was less of it, there was none. So now I'm in a position where I have to travel to the hospital, because the hospital was, of course, on the other side of Paris. And usually with the subway, it's a 30 to 40 minute transit, which is long enough in the subway. By a feet, if I were to just walk, it's like 3 to 4 hours. And of course, I cannot drive, because what happens when an entire city that is hyperpopulated doesn't have public transit? Well, people take the car. So now there were congestion everywhere, and to do the same distance with the car took hours as well. And I didn't even have a car, so it wasn't really going to be a thing. So now I really had, in reality, one option, which is to bike. And luckily for me, I had a bike. I had a bike from when I was a kid, from when before I left for the USA. So my bike was literally like up to my hips. It was like a dick level. It was a child's bike, but it was the best option I had. I wasn't going to go out and buy a brand new fucking bike for 5 days. So this is my ride of choice. I also have a helmet that, thank God, was the right size. But this is my crusade. This is my journey. Every single day, at 2 p.m., I would leave my home on the bike. I would bike from 2 to 3 hours to get to the hospital. And then I would spend time with that person for 5 hours. And at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., I would leave and go back home via bike. So I was biking 3 or 4 hours a day in the worst possible conditions you can imagine, because there was cars everywhere. There were civilians and people who walked everywhere. And I was, again, on a bike that was not adapted. And the bike was so silly that one time I was at a red light and I was on my bike, and a guy that was like drinking a beer or coffee on the side saw me, and he pointed and he went, ha, because he thought I was a small person. He thought I was a midget. And then I stood up and I was like, the fuck? And he was like, oh, because from his perspective, I was like tiny. Then I just like unfolded myself, and he was like, shit, it's an adult on a kid's bike. But naturally, an adult on a kid's bike, I look ridiculous. So I was like the freak show of the town, and people would like just point at me and laugh. So that was a great commute every single day. Of course, if you're a grown ass adult, back then I was 110 kilograms. 110 kilograms? Yeah, 110 kilograms. So I was big as fuck. It was really hard to pedal. Like any like slight incline would just kick my ass, and I was just miserable on that bike. On top of that, it's not like I was biking to do something fun. I was biking to literally witness someone die. Like I would bike for 2 hours, then just sit in a chair, like watch someone that I love die, and then leave again and just repeat the next day. So that sets the picture. But this is just the conditions. This is like the social conditions at the time. Because something else that happened with this entire strike thing is that Parisians went crazy, meaning that there was like something in the air, like a feeling of chaos and madness that had infected people. And I witnessed behaviors back then I'd never seen before in civilized society. So, for example, one time I'm on my little shitty ass kid bike, and the light becomes green and we all start to go. And of course, I'm with the cars, because the issue with the what we call the bike lane, la voie cycliste in Paris, is that they exist, they do, but sometimes they disappear. And when they disappear, you are on your own, because you cannot ride on the sidewalk. That's illegal. So you have to ride on the road with the cars. You are now essentially a car, but I'm not a car. I'm a guy who's like this tall on a kid's bike with an helmet. But that is something that I had to deal with. So we are at the red light. The light becomes green. We all go. A woman who had like her baby in a little, like not luggage, like what do they call it? A stroller. A lady with the baby in the stroller pushes the stroller in the way of the cars to make them stop, because she wanted to go when the light was red for her. And I remember seeing this and thinking, holy fuck, you just risked your baby's life because you couldn't wait 25 seconds. And this is a behavior that I saw across the board with pregnant women or with women with babies who would just use their strollers as something to, like, for example, I would like watch one of the very few buses that would go around. Women would like push their stroller into the door to prevent them from closing. And it's like, do you know you have a baby in there that can die? What are you doing? But that was the general feeling of madness. And another thing that alarmed me a lot, because you only see that in the worst of society, is old people were going insane. So I saw old people dumpster diving because they couldn't afford food because their pensions were cut by the government. That's already sad enough. And it was the sad part too, is that these were people that I knew, because these were like old people that lived in my neighborhood. So it does something to your heart when you witness someone that you know worked their entire life for a pension, dumpster diving at dusk to not be seen, and when they see you, they run away out of shame. So that was already not great. But I also saw old people commit acts of vandalism. You haven't lived until you see an old person destroy vehicles for fun. Like I witnessed an old man who would go through parked car to parked car, and he would just destroy their mirrors. He would destroy their windshield, etc. And this is not a crackhead, by the way. This is not someone who's like out of their mind. This is someone who was a perfectly well dressed old man that looked perfectly respectable, that just decided, you know what? There's no cohesion to society. None of this makes sense. I'm just going to have fun. And so the guy would like push bikes and destroy bikes, and no one would do anything, because what are you going to do? What are you going to do? He's an old man. I'm not going to break both his legs. Like, he just gets to behave like this now. This was the general vibe. This vibe also led to me almost being assassinated 2 times. And I use the term assassinated on purpose. These were not accidents. There were 2 instances of people going out of their way to try to take my life. And I'm going to tell them to you after I drink. I'm getting a little bit heated. I don't know if you can tell. So, how does that even happen? First attempted murder against my life. I'm again at a red light, and what I described to you earlier has happened. My bike lane has died. So when you bike in Paris, it's very funny. You're on the bike lane, and then suddenly you're not, because your bike lane merges forcefully into the road, and now you're with the cars. So I'm with the cars, I'm waiting at the red light, and it's an intersection. And intersection is very easy to navigate. Like, this is not like a four-way stop like in the USA. There's literally a way that goes straight and then a way that goes across. So you can either take a right, a left, or go straight. I have to take a left. I am, of course, in France, so we drive on the right. This means that I am taking the most possible dangerous turn as a bike, because it means that there is no left lane in France. It doesn't exist. So I have to go through my lane, then cross the other people that come through lane, and then I enter my lane. So I have to do this. To do this, I have to watch for the cars that are coming in front of me to make sure that I dodge them and I enter a hole in between two cars. That's easy enough when you have a motorized vehicle. But when you have a bike, you can't speed up that fast, right? Your speed is zero, especially when you're a fat ass like I was. So it was a very dangerous exercise. But I had managed so far. My light goes green. I watch the cars that go by, and they all go straight. And I'm watching for a hole. And eventually, I see a hole. There is a big ass like white pickup truck that we call in fourgonnette. Is essentially the thing that like we see in movies when the guy is trying to like pick up kids with candy. That's what it was like. And I see it coming straight. It's not turning, it's not doing anything, it's coming straight. And I see that there is a hole behind it. So I know that I have plenty of space to go around. So I start biking. And as I start biking, of course, it's a bike. A bike is not something you just do this and you turn. You have to ease into the turn. So I start to slowly turn my bike. And as I turn my bike, of course, I start to inch towards the truck. But I'm not going to hit it. It's going to go past me and I'm going to go around it and behind it and continue on my way. As I'm doing this, I realize that the truck is doing the same thing. So as I'm turning towards it, it's turning towards me, as if it's trying to take like a late right. But he doesn't have any signals on. So I'm thinking, well, there's no fucking way that this guy is actually turning into me. Guess what? He was actually turning into me. So what happens is that I panic last second. I like move my bike out of the way, and the guy's back of the truck bumps into me and sends me flying. So now I'm in the middle of an intersection. I fall off a kid's bike, which is funny enough, and I'm luckily not hurt. So I'm starting to like push back up. I get my bike back up. And of course, what happens when you get hit by a car? You turn around and you look at the car thinking, are you going to stop? Are you going to acknowledge that you almost killed me? Or are you just going to continue on your way? I would have been fine with either way. I didn't care. Like I had a mission to do. I had a mission to accomplish. I had to go see my family member. But none of these happened. Instead, what happened is that the door of the truck slid open and the guy stood out and stepped out of it with a baseball bat. Not to help me fix my bike, right? Not to play catch with me. He stood out and stepped out with a baseball bat to essentially finish me on the ground. Comme on dit en français, il allait me finir au sol, l'enculé. That guy hit me, and his first reflex was, I better finish that kid off before he can stand up. So the guy starts to walk towards me with the bat above his head like this, and I'm thinking, like, what the fuck? So I get on my bike and I flee. I just like try to like outrun this maniac who, by the way, parked his truck in the middle of the intersection just to be able to run after me with a baseball bat. And so like I managed to outpace the guy, thank God, because he was fairly slow. But after this, it really made me think of something. I don't know if you guys are catching like why this is so crazy. The crazy part is not really that he turned into me. That's Paris. It's fairly normal. It's like a cultural ritual almost. It's not that he didn't give a fuck that he almost killed someone else. And it's not really even that he tried to hit me afterwards, because the mindset of I did something wrong, but I'm going to punish you for it, that's typical. It's human behavior. The thing that really struck me with this is the fact that the guy had access to a baseball bat, because it's not like he was rummaging for it in the truck. It was right there. The guy had a baseball bat on the passenger seat of the car. You know what this means? This means that this person was so used to hitting people with his car that he had prepared a weapon when like shit hit the fan and he had to like defend himself or like prove his masculinity afterwards. Like, this is shit that you only really see like in the Balkan, in Russia. Like, this is Russian behavior, but not Parisian behavior. Well, that was the first attempt against my life. And he couldn't get to me, thank God. The second one was even more shocking, because this one, it didn't involve a vehicle. The second one, I'm biking home this time. The first one, I was going to the hospital. This time, I'm biking home. And so it's very late and it's night. And when it's night, you don't see shit. Yes, I understand, Captain Obvious. I'm explaining it to you so that you have the context of the situation. I personally, because I'm a good boy, try to stick to the travel lanes for bikes because they tend to have lighting like ahead of them, so people can see you, so vehicles can see you. And this is pretty standard behavior unless you are a complete monkey. But there are a lot of dumb people in Paris, as this story is going to indicate. So I'm on my bike lane and I'm switching lanes and etc. And the fun game about the bike lane is that you are supposed to follow it. So it sometimes cross the roads for some reason. Now it's on the right, now it's on the left, now it's under a bridge. You just follow it. You're like an idiot. You're like, okay, bike lane, why are you taking me next? And so I'm on my bike lane and I have my little helmet and I'm doing everything properly. And I turn right to go across the street because on the other side of the street is the continuation of my bike lane that then goes straight. And as I turn and I'm crossing to then turn into my bike lane, a bike comes from fucking nowhere out of the darkness, because the entire path that was before was not a bike lane. It was not even a lane. It was like a place for people to walk. There was no public lighting. The guy was not wearing a helmet. He was not using a light. He was essentially invisible. So he comes out of my blind spot from the dark. And I have like a ninja level reaction time where I, at the last second, avoid him and manage to not essentially like T-bone him, because here is how like the entire thing was going. He was riding straight, and on his right was an overpass, so it was void, meaning that if I had run into him, I would have run into him directly from the side and pushed him and potentially killed him or maimed him. And I managed to save this idiot's life, an idiot who, by the way, could see me because he was driving like this and I was here, like I was directly in his peripheral because I was in the light and I was wearing a light. But for some reason, he decided to just say, fuck it, he's going to stop for me. I couldn't see the guy. But I go and I save his fucking life and I dodge him last second, and that places me, of course, ahead of him. So now I'm backing ahead of the guy thinking, Jesus fuck, you're lucky that I have very good reflexes. Next thing you know, the guy catches up to me and starts biking like next to me, and he's like, mais non. And this is how can I explain it to English people? This is the pathetic attempt at a troglodyte to express the fact that he cannot believe that I would have dared to come even close to his bike. He couldn't believe that I even dared not give him the right of way when he was fucking invisible. So I'm thinking, okay, this guy is bad news. And of course he's going at me. So, oh, you almost ran into me, blah blah blah. Next thing I know, he opens his jacket, takes out a knife, and starts stabbing at me. He has one hand on the bike little thing we call the guidon in French, and he's just like trying to get at me with like the point of the knife. And I'm thinking, what is this? Is this Les Trois Mousquetaires? Am I back in the Middle Ages? What is this? Why do you have a knife in your jacket? It's like it wasn't a knife in his backpack. It was a knife right there. Like he went like this and it was right there. So the guy was fully loaded and prepared to the point where I was like, you do this often. Like this is a normal Tuesday afternoon for you. You run into people, almost kill them, and then you attempt to stab them. So what do I do? Well, I can only do one thing. I'm not going to fight the guy. He's clearly unhinged. So I try to speed up, and now it becomes this ridiculous like vaudeville chase where there is one guy on the kid's bike trying his darndest to outrun a guy who is on a city bike, because of course it wasn't his own bike, it was a city bike that he most likely stole. And the city bikes in Paris are called Vélib, and they're notoriously heavy. So he has this like big clunky bike that can't really go that fast, and he's trying to catch up with a guy who is on a kid's bike with a knife in his hand going like this. Imagine being a spectator and seeing that going through the street. You, if you live in a civilized society, would think, well, that's insane. It would be the story of the ages. If you live in Paris, it's just called another afternoon. Like literally, it's nothing special. So I managed to escape that guy, thank God, because at some point there was like a very steep decline, and he wasn't really able to like hold on to the knife and the bike at the same time. So I managed to like create distance between the two of us. But I remember just going home and sitting on my couch and thinking like, why am I even here? I paid close to €1,000 to get hit by people with their trucks, almost stabbed by people on their Vélib, and to watch someone die. Like, can I get a refund, please? But yeah, that was the shittiest week I've ever spent in my life, and it was in Paris. So if you wonder why I don't want to go back, that is why. Watch someone die, yes, because the entire reason why I was in Paris in the first place was because a very close family member was dying of cancer. What a great trip. And by the way, this trip happened just before I created a YouTube channel. So when I came back from this, I guess like it made me realize that life had no meaning, and I needed to make a meaning for myself, and so I made the YouTube channel. It was literally after that. What does it feel like to have so many good stories? It's just my life is a movie. What can I say? Okay, well, that was the story of Paris. And actually, this one, I covered everything. I didn't forget a single thing. Well, of course, it stuck with me so much. All right, next up, my struggle with American academia, my first day in America, the time I almost died, childhood, my job working for the French government, the ghost story, awkwardness story, and the wife story. Which one do you guys want? French, ghost, academia, ghost, first day. We have Foxarium that is deeply attached to the story of the sushi place, but who sadly is the only person. Maybe you can try to convince the other people on the chat. Ghost, French government, sharks, ghost, wife, government. Are you afraid? I'm afraid every single day of my life, bro. Wife story, academia, ghost. Should we do the ghost story again? I know that many of you guys have heard it, but the ghost story is pretty good. So let's do the ghost story. Okay. I have to put myself in. Actually, I can't do the ghost story. We have to do the story of America first, because if I do the ghost story, I'm going to spoil something. So let's do the story of America, and then we'll do American academia, and then we'll do the ghost story. Fair? Fair. It's not like I'm actually asking you for your opinion. However, I'm asking for 200 likes, non-negotiable. Okay. Okay, find the dorms. This one is good. This one is really good. Okay, this one is really good. All right. Will this be posted as a video later? Yes, you'll be able to watch the full replay. Okay, let's do this. My first day in America. This is one of my favorite stories to tell because it's so good. All right. And I will take my time this time because there are so many small details that are just really important. So I left France in 2016 to go to America, and it was my first time away from my family. So leaving was, of course, very difficult for my poor mom. It was difficult for me, but it was important. It was the most important decision of my life because it made me a man, because I was forced to live by myself, make my own decisions, make my own mistakes, and it transformed me. And it's something that I think every young man needs to go through. Anyways, I go to America. The plane ride, actually, pretty good. It was the last good plane ride of my life. Everything one afterwards sucked. I arrive in America. When I arrive in America, I arrive in O'Hare. Oh, Chicago. And then when I arrive in O'Hare, when you're a dirty immigrant, you first have to go through customs. And when you go through customs, they have you walk through what is essentially a corridor made of glass. And you can see through the glass the other corridors because they're the ones that are connected to these tubes that are connected to the plane. So you see every single plane that arrives that is going to lead to customs, and you can see through the thing if there are a lot of people that are going to go there. Of course, with my luck, my plane arrived 15 minutes after a plane full of Chinese students. Meaning that when I arrived at customs usually you queue up for like what, 30, 40 minutes tops. I queued up for 2 hours and 50 minutes because there were 300 Chinese students ahead of me, and none of them spoke English. None of them. Meaning that you can see when you're in the queue the people who speak to the custom officers, and you can tell like none of them were able to communicate. And so I was thinking, oh, this is going to be like they're all going to be told, well, you can't enter the country then. Nope. They all had a visa in their passport. I don't know what the visa said. I think the visa said, I have a lot of money, let me in, bitch. Because every single one of them, their conversation with the custom officers was essentially, hi, who are you? Don't know. Are you Chinese? Yes. Okay, you can go in. I was told it was supposed to be rigorous. Like, wasn't America supposed to be this like hyper racist country that doesn't let foreigners in? What is this nonsense? So now the queue is going really, really fast. Thank God. It was still 3 hours, but if it had taken the time it's supposed to take for 300 people, I would have never made it into the country. I would still be in the queue today. Anyways, I now get to be at the top of the queue. And so I show up thinking it's going to be the same for me, right? So I show up with a big ass smile. Guy takes my passport, says, France, huh? Okay, why are you here? What is your name? What is that name? What is the origin of that name? Like, who are your parents? What do your parents do? What are you gonna do? Do you like the NBA? Who do you support in the NFL? Are you a terrorist? And I'm thinking still there, like, can I go back and pretend to be Chinese? Because like clearly, if I didn't speak proper English, you would just let me through. So what is this nonsense? And the guy just grilled me for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and eventually I'm thinking, this guy is not going to let me in. Like he's going to tell me you're going back to France. And by miracle, I don't know. I think I remember why. I think like he had to take his break or something, and because of that, he let me through. So he gave me the stamp, and I went through, thinking, well, that was horrible. Okay. Uh, Now the issue is that I spent 3 hours in the queue. So what do you think happened? Well, I missed my flight because I wasn't going to study in Chicago. I was going to study somewhere else, and I had my connection at O'Hare. So now I am in a country where I've never been before. It's my first time outside of France by myself. I speak English, but my English back then was pretty bad. It was pretty rudimental, and I just missed my plane. And I'm in a system that I don't understand. So I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Luckily for me, this is when the incredible kindness of Americans comes in. Americans have this reputation worldwide of being like rude and like obnoxious and vulgar, and that is true. But they're also extremely nice. And so I show up to that little desk where you can make like you can ask like, "Oh, I missed my flight," or "Can you move my flight?" or whatever. I show up with my shitty ass English to a guy who looks exactly like Jonah Hill. I don't know if you guys watch The Wolf of Wall Street. Jonah Hill plays a character, and I'm plugging the laptop because it's about to die. Jonah Hill plays a character in The Wolf of Wall Street that's this like chubby white guy with like curly hair and glasses. That guy was like the picture of Jonah Hill. So I show up to him and I essentially tell him in broken English, miss my flight because Chinese. And so the guy was like, oh, this guy is racist as well. So he's going to fit just well in America. So he tells me, oh, you don't have to worry about that. I'm just going to give you a new flight. And I'm looking at it like, at him like, what? Like, you're just going to put me on a new flight just like this? Because in France, if you miss your flight, even if it's not your fault and you want another flight, you have to do triple backflips. You have to be able to speak 15 languages. You have to present like a replica of Napoleon's little fingers. They make you jump through so many hoops, where in America, it's just like, yeah, I'll just give you another ticket. And I was like, okay, how much do I owe? And he's like, oh, that's free. Like French people on the chat right now. Isn't that incredible? That would never happen in France. Like this level of customer service doesn't exist in France. And so I get my ticket and I'm like, damn, that's insane. So I show up to my new gate thinking, well, that America is amazing. Like I'm already like, je suis déjà matrixé. I'm already like, I'm an American now. Fucking America. It's so, oh, Jesus Christ, we can't do that anymore. My fist was closed. My fist was closed. Okay. Anyways, so I get my ticket, and I get ready to take my plane. But the issue is that in that moment, the issue is that I'm getting red. The issue is that in that moment, I also know that whoever was supposed to wait for me on the other side of that plane isn't really going to be there because I'm like 5 hours late. So instead of arriving at 3 p.m. where I'm supposed to study, I'm arriving at like 8 or 9 p.m. And so I'm in my flight and the flight goes well. Although I must say, in the flight, I met one cunt. And wouldn't you believe it? The one person that I hated on that flight was French. I was sat next to a French guy and we started talking. And the guy, when he learned when I was going to study, which was a D1 score, but not a good one, and he was going to a good one, he started treating me like some sort of peasant. Like he wouldn't like address me anymore, and like I wasn't worth his time. Fuck that guy. I don't know where he is nowadays, but whoever you are, I will find you again and we'll see if your situation is better than mine because I didn't appreciate your attitude back then. Anyways, we land and it's now night. I'm in a place where I know nothing. I don't even know the bus system or anything. And I'm on my own. And in a way, it's like that's what adventure is. Like you're on your own and good fucking luck. So my first taste of freedom in America, and that is so cliche, is I got myself a double cheeseburger and fries. Because I was like, well, you might as well lean into it. So I get my fries, I get my burger. Of course, you eat the burger first and then the fries. So what I do is I eat my burger and then I take my fries in the baggie and I go. You have to understand at this point, I've been traveling for 20 hours. I'm exhausted. Like I'm almost delirious because of all of the delays and all of the Chinese people. So I have my two luggages that are fairly big, my little fries, and I just go outside and I try to figure out what the fuck I'm supposed to do. I know which bus I'm supposed to take. And I cannot say which one because they would give away where I studied. But essentially, I wait for that bus. And when that bus shows up, I go in. And the bus driver does something incredible. Again, if you're French, you're going to tell me that's bullshit, it's not possible. I get in the bus, and the bus driver says, "Hello, how are you today?" And when I heard these words, I thought to myself, this guy is going to try and scam me. Because the only people who ask you how are you today in France are people who are there to scam you. They're after your money. No one says that. Bus drivers in France ignore you, right? They don't say a word to you. They even sometimes go out of their way to insult you. I and my friends have been personally insulted by bus drivers. It's normal in France. It's part of the customs. French drivers in France, bus drivers, will oftentimes also, if they see that you're the only person at the bus stop, just not stop because you're not important enough. They're not going to stop for one fucking person. Are you fucking kidding me? So they just keep going and you see your bus just leave. It's a whole entire story. Like public transit in France is horrible on so many levels. In America, it's non-existent, but the few that exist are actually pretty good. So the guy is friendly to me and I'm giving him this like weird vibe of please don't talk to me. What the fuck do you want? And then I realize after a few minutes of conversation that no, it's just the way the guy is. He's just kind. And the entire area where I was, people were just. C'était indécent à quel point ils étaient gentils. Everyone was super kind. And it was a shock. It was a culture shock and a half because I'm not a nice person. And so it really changed me deep down. But, anyways, I'm tired. I want to eat my fries. And I also don't really know what my stop is. And I'm so tired that I don't really even care. Like I'm just riding the bus and wherever it takes me, it takes me. All I know is that it's taking me away from the airport. So I sit in the middle of the bus. And this is super important for the rest of the story. The bus is somewhat long and you have like the first part with the seats that are like side by side and you have the middle part for like the strollers and you can like take the seat down and you can sit there. And then you have the back of the bus. And all the way at the back of the bus, you have that like little bench that's like this thing and then you have the seats. I sit at the start of the back of the bus. So the door is like right here, and there's the aisle in between me and the door. Super important because that's going to be vital for the rest of the story. At this point, I have my luggages around me, and this is why I sat there because there was space for the luggage. I'm leaned over, and I'm just eating my fries. I'm in America. The bus goes. At some point, the doors open, and a black guy, and I say a black guy not to be racial, it's going to be relevant later, enters the bus and he sits across me. So he's not next to me, he's across the aisle on a seat that is exactly next to the window. I don't notice the guy, I don't give a fuck. I eat my fries. Another stop, two black guys get in. And they don't say anything to the black guy, but they go and they sit at the back of the bus, probably an adult reflex. And at the back of the bus, they start to chat with the black dude and they start to make fun of him. And what I catch, like the glimpses that I catch, are stuff like, "Oh, are you going to your shitty job? Or are you going to be flipping burgers? Like, well, you're such a bitch. You're such a sellout. Like, you act so white. Like, you think you're better than us because you have a job. Blah blah blah." Essentially, they're like talking trash, and the guy just takes it. Like he says nothing. He just sits there and takes it. And I'm eating my fries. I'm not really paying attention. But I'm starting to notice a certain level of tension. And this was my first introduction to that special tension that doesn't really exist in France. And that is the racial tension that is prevalent in America. Because every single white person in that bus starts to sweat. They all start to look very concerned with what is about to happen. And I'm not, because I'm a French kid. I don't know what the fuck is happening. I don't understand the dynamics of what's like unfolding in front of my eyes. So I just keep eating my fries. Then eventually, at some point, guys in the back hit a nerve, and the guy on the side says something back. And he says something like, "Yeah, well, at least I have a job, use a bitch," or something like this. Like, essentially, he's saying, like, "At least I make money. Like, what do you do with your life?" And then there's a silence. Then I hear click. And I hear, "Repeat that, bitch. Repeat that, motherfucker." And the guy on the right, nothing, and he's like avoiding eye contact. But I'm seeing, because again, my position is I don't know what the fuck they're doing behind me, but I see every single white person. And every single white person, in an effort of, in a way, like replicating white flight within the confines of the bus, had migrated at the start of the bus. And so I can see all of their faces, and they're all like this. That's my best impression of like white people in America. And I'm thinking like, what could be happening behind me? But I'm so tired that I don't really care. And so the guys in the back are like still talking trash, still talking trash. And then the bus stops, and at that stop, they bounce, like they stand up and they leave. And as they leave, they stop at my level because I'm the only white guy in the entire bus that didn't move. Every single other white person, the second they started hearing that click, they left the back of the bus and they were at the start of the bus. And the guy, it was like it's still like engraved in my memory. He leaned like this, and he was like right there for me, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he was like, "You good?" And he had a gun. And so he wasn't pointing it at me or anything, but it was like almost holstered, but he was holding it like sideways like this. And like, how do you react in that moment? I was so tired, and I was eating fries, and it was my first day in America, and I don't understand the context what just happened. So my tired ass just went, "You want some fries?" There was like a few fries left, and I just like put the fries under his nose, and he looked at me like, this I almost said it. This guy must be crazy. And he like packed the gun and he just left. But that was my first day in America. That was my first experience with American culture, and I saw a gun. And it was the first and last time I saw a gun in America. The first and last time, except the time where I went to a range and I shot for fun. But a wild gun in the wild, first and last time. What city is this? I cannot tell you the city. Did he try the fries? Didn't try the fries. I think that my reaction, I don't think he was going to hurt me. I think he was just shocked by the fact that I didn't have a reaction. And so when he saw me like, "You want some fries, sir?" I think he was like, "Oh, that guy is crazy." So he just like left. And so incredible first interaction. Eventually, and because of course, remember that in this entire thing, I don't know where I'm going. I know I'm supposed to aim for a campus, but what even is a campus? Like, this is how unprepared I was, and this is a staple for me. I'm always unprepared. My my idea it was, I'm just going to look through the windows of the bus, and whenever I see something that looks like a campus, a college campus, I'm just going to step out. For some reason, this worked, by the way. So I step out with my luggage in the cold. It's 8 p.m. It's dark. And if you've ever arrived in a new place when it's dark, it's horrible because you don't see shit. You don't know where you are. And so I'm essentially just a foreign guy walking around looking like this, trying to figure out where I'm supposed to go. Because I was told the name of my dorms, but I don't have a phone. I don't have data on my phone. I can't look up Google Maps. So I don't know where I'm going. So I'm essentially looking for a place that sounds like what I was told it's supposed to look like. And lo and behold, nothing looks like a dorm because I cannot, of course, I'm French. Like, I don't have the eye for college campuses, so I'm essentially just wandering from building to building like a vagrant and entering and being like, "Hey, is this place? No? Okay, thank you very much." And then I just like hit every single place until I stumbled upon my dorms by mistake. And the reason why I ended up visiting that place was because it was the tallest tower. It was visible from like miles away. But looking at it, I was like, "There's no fucking way that's a dome. It looks like the projects." So I was like, maybe I'm going to ask the people from the projects. Maybe I'll find the guy who had the gun in the project. He can help me and guide me. So I enter this place, and they'll tell me, "Oh, no, this is the place you're looking for. This is your dorms." Guys, the dread in my soul when I was told that, I was like, "Fuck, really? Like, this shitty ass place is where I'm going to be spending the next year? It's horrible. It's like the shittiest hotel I've ever been in. But hey, don't have a choice. I have nowhere else to go." So they give me my key to my room. They tell me my room, and I go up to my room. And this is one of the most formative moments of my life, where I've been awake for like 30 hours at this point. I enter my dorm. It's empty because I'm the first one to make it here. And so there's no one, there's no human presence. And I open the door to my room in the dorms. White walls, cold, a window with like a mesh that prevents you from opening the window because there were so many suicides that they had to install this. A metal frame of a bunk bed with no mattress and no pillow. This is my first day. And at that moment, I'm going to be honest with you and transparent. I kneeled down on the floor and I started to cry. And in that moment, if you could have given me a button to press to be teleported back in my house in Paris with my mom and her food and my cushy bed and everything else, I would have pressed it so fucking hard, I would have made a hole in the ground. Okay? I was desperate. But this is what life is. You make your choices. Now you have to deal with this. If I had went to my mom to say, "Mommy, I don't like it here. Can I come home?" She would have told me, "Listen to me. Listen to me, you son of a bitch. I spent 3,000 euros to send you there. You bet your ass you're going to spend at least a year there. Don't call back." Click. So I was like, this is it. This is your life now. You have to deal with this shit. And so my first night, I spent sleeping with a coat balled up as a pillow on the ground and a jacket as a blanket. That was my first night. And that teaches you something about you. Like what is your character? I'm going to be also honest here. There's a person that was introduced into my life at this moment that I think really helped me because he introduced an element of joy that wasn't really present, and that is my Chinese roommate, whose name I completely forgot. But when I was in that moment of, holy fuck, I have no mattress, I have nothing, this is garbage, I was lied to, it's going to be horrible, someone kicked down my door. So I'm hearing bang, and I hear, "What's up, motherfucker?" And it's this tiny Chinese guy who just barged into my room and is like, "We're best friends now." Essentially, he adopted me. I didn't have a choice. He was like, "We are friends." And in a way, that's fate and destiny making up for the Chinese immigrants that fucked up my trip, because that guy was amazing. He was the funniest dude. He was the exact opposite of me. Essentially, I'm pure cat energy. I'm black cat energy. And he was like pure, like, dog energy all over the place, always wanting to go out, always being like, he would approach random people, random girls, and chatting them up, and everyone loved him because he was like so exuberant. Well, anyways, that guy, for the first night, we spent like just like playing cards and having fun, and then we went to bed. So he sort of like saved my ass on this one. And he's also the guy that I did all of the procedures, I guess, with. Because to get a mattress in this place, because it was that shitty, you had to go down and like loan a mattress from these greedy motherfuckers. You had to get a prepaid card to put money on to buy food from the cafeteria that couldn't be refunded. You couldn't pay with cash. You had to buy your own fucking pillow and blankets. They would not give you pillows and blankets. And this is when I first went out in America. And before I tell you that story, I want to make sure that I'm not forgetting anything. So, America, missing plane, gun in bus, finding the dorms, Chinese roommate. Okay. So, the Chinese roommate. So, my first experience with the guy is, we're going to go buy blankets and pillows. And of course, we're cheap as fuck. At this point, I don't know who he is. I haven't quite grasped what he is. But we go to the Dollar Tree. The Dollar Tree, my favorite store in America. And before we can get to Dollar Tree, we have to cross a bridge. And you're going to say, well, dude, you're stretching your fucking stories. Why do I care about a bridge? You're going to care about the bridge because that bridge was infamous amongst the students. Something that I was told from day one was, do not cross the bridge. And as a French person, again, that doesn't live in a segregated country, I didn't understand what this meant. But essentially, in French, it's like as if someone told you, ne traverse pas le périph'. Don't cross the périph'. It's the same thing. What it means is that there is a wood before the bridge and there is a wood after the bridge. And the wood before the bridge is the college campus, and it's safe because there is college police, there is college patrols. But the wood after the bridge is the ghetto. And this is something that I didn't know about America, but America is it's like so just fragmented that you can literally walk for 2 blocks and it's the most beautiful houses you've ever seen. Then you walk for 2 more blocks and it's the ghetto. And it's right there. And it's like so close. That doesn't exist in France. In France, you have the nice neighborhoods, then you have a little like transition period, and then you have the shitty neighborhoods. And actually, the way we did it in France is we put all of the immigrants in La banlieue. So we have what we call the suburbs, and we just put all of the immigrants there saying, yeah, just be garbage amongst yourself, but don't bother the good French people who live in the 16e and who have all of the money. That's how we do it in France. That way we can tell ourselves we're good people. In America, they don't do it like this. And so this bridge was like the distinction between safe and not safe. And it's so funny because I didn't believe in that. I was like, there's no way, you guys are exaggerating. The first time I crossed the bridge, I wasn't even done crossing the bridge. A guy tried to mug me. Like, I wanted to tell him, dude, I'm still on the bridge. Doesn't that work as like a safe space somehow? Like, don't you have to wait for me to be across the bridge? But anyways, that place across the bridge was the ghetto. And I'll come back later on because I had to go back to that place several times. But when I crossed the bridge, luckily the Dollar Tree is right there. And so we go into the Dollar Tree, and the Dollar Tree is false advertising because nothing is $1 in there. It's still like 15, 20 bucks, but it's cheap. And in that Dollar Tree, I got my pillow, but I also got a blue blanket. And the reason why I insist on the blue blanket is because I still have that blue blanket, and it's one of my most prized possessions. As a rule, I try to not get too attached to material possessions, but this thing I cherish with all my heart because I'm deeply attached to it emotionally. Because it's been with me from day one of America to today. To this day, I still sleep with that blanket. And I only sleep with that. I sleep in the nudes, by the way. I know that you guys all love the details. But I'm just so stupidly attached to that thing that I think if I lost it, I would be devastated. And actually, I almost lost it 3 years ago in a move, and I was really sad about it until I found it again. It doesn't have a name, and I will not give it a name, but you can give it a name if you want. But that is my blanket, and I still have it. Anyways, all of that to tell you the story of the blanket. But then after that, we needed phones. And to get a phone in America, you have to get a phone plan. And so to do that, we went to T-Mobile. And this is when the French brain stops being adapted to America. Because to get to T-Mobile, we didn't have a car. And so we thought we're just going to walk. It's going to be a cool, fun adventure. So what is your first reflex? Well, as a French person, I open Google Maps, I type T-Mobile, direction, and I see where it is. The issue is that back then, the function to know how much time it would take by feet did not exist. And so I only had my eye to judge if it was far or close. And the thing is that I thought about it with a French brain. You can cross Paris in a few hours. It's a tiny city. So I felt that it would be the same here. And so I told my roommate, oh, there should be a 20-minute walk tops. And so we start walking. Here's what I didn't consider. On Google Maps, you have something called the scale. And the scale is this tiny thing at the bottom right of the screen that tells you this much on your screen equals that many miles. And the scale in France and the USA is not the same. In the USA, it's multiplied by 7. So whatever distance I thought it was 7 times that. So what looked like 2 blocks was actually across the fucking map. And so we start walking. Again, remember, I don't have Google Maps. So I'm just following the streets. And we walk and we walk and we walk, and buildings and buildings and buildings and blocks and blocks and blocks. And I think to myself, there's no fucking way we're lost. Like, I'm going in the right direction, but the T-Mobile should have appeared 40 minutes ago. And we can keep walking. My Chinese roommate is in good spirits. Honestly, props to him. I would have gotten very mad in his place. But eventually, after 2 hours of walking, 2 hours, this is not a nice hike, okay? This is 2 hours with shoes that are not meant to walk that long in a city that is not super scenic, not beautiful, and you're just walking in the heat because it's August. We finally arrived to the T-Mobile. Guess what I find out? That they do not sell plans to people who have the type of visa that we have. So we just did all of that for nothing. And this is when part of my roommate's personality that I discovered only at that point rears its ugly head. The guy is incredibly selfish. So essentially, he waited for a moment while I wasn't paying attention, and he jumped in a cab and he left. He just left my ass here. So I was like, okay, so now I'm alone. So I had to make my way alone without a phone. That's one thing about my roommate. The other thing about my roommate was that he was incredibly racist, but racist in a way that only Chinese people and Asian people get to be, where he was like openly racist in the face of people. And when people told him, you're racist, he would say, yes. As if you are asking, like, are you 23? Yes. Are you racist? Yes. And so what happened one time is that this guy uttered the most racist sentence I've ever heard in my life. And I spend a lot of time on Paul and 4chan, so you know it's serious. Let me tell you that story. We are, and at this point it was a daily occurrence, going to Subway because the kitchen wasn't open yet because it was August. And so we are essentially eating Subway for every single meal. And when we go to get the Subway, we get the sandwiches. And when we get back out of the shop, we cross a black guy who is sitting on the curb and is clearly a panhandler, right? He's not bothering us. He's not saying anything to us. He's literally not even looking at us. We cross the guy, and my roommate looks at him. Like, he looks at him like this. We take like 10 steps, and he turns to me and he tells me, you know, in my country, we keep the monkeys in the zoo. It took me like 5 to 10 seconds to understand what he meant. Because like I was like, why are you talking to me about monkeys and zoo? And then it dawned on me that he was like referring to the black guy. And I was like, holy fuck, that is beyond, that's not just spicy. Like that's a level of racism that is unheard of at this point in the West. Like we don't do that shit anymore. C'est l'artisanat chinois à ce point-là. L'industrie, elle a été délocalisée. On fait plus ça, nous. Like the industry that produces that product is no longer in Europe. Like we leave that to the Asians. But that's great. Like I remember hearing this, and I was so like dumbfounded that he would just say it in the open because he said it loud around people. I was just like, wow, I can't. I'll hang with you, but if something bad happens to you, you're on your own, bro. And actually, interestingly enough, one of his friend that was also a Chinese immigrant got killed, straight up killed, because he got mugged by a black guy across the bridge, of course. And I think the Chinese guy didn't have cash on him, and so like the black guy got mad or something, and the Chinese guy just called him the N-word, and so the guy just shot him in the face. So that's one down. But yeah, I remember that story really affected him, and he became even more racist after that. So that's the Chinese guy, whose name I forgot again. Something else happened with him actually that also speaks to his character. So I found out afterwards that the guy was loaded. And when I mean loaded, I don't mean like rich. I mean he had so much money he didn't know what to make of it. He was part of that like new Chinese upper class where like they have like money coming out of the wazoo and they become rich like almost overnight. And they like with the UN shenanigans, it becomes millions of dollars in US. I'm certain that if you live in Canada or like Vancouver, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like the Chinese international students, they have the most incredible clothes, they have the most incredible cars, and that guy was exactly that. Week one of our stay in America, the guy bought a Hummer, big ass car, right? He just got his driver's license. He bought that car, a car that is, of course, completely unpractical on a college campus because parking on the college campus is horribly difficult. And now you have a fucking Hummer. So the guy, within I think a month, realized that it was a bad investment. But instead of trying to trade the brand new Hummer for something else, he literally just abandoned the Hummer on a parking lot somewhere and he bought a BMW. He bought the two vehicles cash. Okay, combined, that's like $150, $150,000 cash. It was nothing to him, nothing. He spent it like this. The reason why this guy who is so loaded was living in the dorms with someone like me who was beyond fucking broke was because the college that we went to had a policy that for your first year you had to live in the dorms. You're not allowed to live in the to not live in the dorms. Year two, you are allowed to go and move out into a house. Guess what the guy did for year two? His dad just bought him a house. Straight up. He bought him a house on campus. That's again a few, like close to $1 million, if not $1 million, like this. It didn't mean anything to them. Like it was small potatoes to them. The reason why I insist on this is because that guy also happened to be the cheapest motherfucker I've ever met in my life. Well, one time, and actually this connects to the story at the start, I got dumped by my girlfriend because I got a bad haircut. And so this guy, trying to be a good friend, told me, oh, I'm going to take you to Chick-fil-A so that I can, like, in a sense, like boost your mood or whatever. So we get into his BMW and we drive there. And I don't know, maybe you tell me, maybe I'm the weird one here, but to me, if you invite someone to a restaurant, it means you're going to pay, right? You told me you're inviting me. I'm not taking my card, I'm not taking cash, you're going to pay for me. We get into the Chick-fil-A, and this person, this man who burned hundreds of thousands of dollars on cars that he didn't use and who clearly was a millionaire made me pay. He didn't just pay for his and then not mine, he made me pay. Back then, I was making $750 a month. Do you understand? This is like I was bottom of the fucking barrel broke. I was surviving because my mom was sending me money when she could. And I remember like sitting there with my, and in a way he succeeded in doing what he wanted, which was to take my mind away from my ex-girlfriend, because I was sitting there with my burger thinking, dude, like what the fuck is wrong with you? Guess what? He abandoned me again. He waited for me to go to the bathroom, and when I came back, he was gone. He drove me there. So I had to drive back with the bus. And this is the moment where I stopped fucking with him because I was like, yeah, you're fun, but you're also an asshole. And so I was just like, Jesus Christ, like, how can someone be like this? Incredibly self-centered. But he wasn't my only Chinese roommate. I had two. And the other one was a guy who was like a complete nerd and shut in, and who went to America to play video games. Essentially, I feel like he lied to his parents that he was going to study here and everything, and he spent the entire year cooped up in his room eating noodles, like instant noodles. And he had like a humidifier going, so his room was like horribly damp. And he just played League of Legends. And that guy, in a sense, paid tuition in America to get to diamond rank in League of Legends. I still remember that he mained G4. He was a Jarvan main back when Jarvan was good. I think that Jarvan is still good. It's still a good pick. Anyways, that guy wasn't super interesting and he never did anything crazy. The other roommates are what interests me because the disposition of the room was as such. There were 3 rooms in the dorms, a bathroom. The one room had the 2 Chinese guys. The second room had 2 Americans. One of them was like Irish American. The other one was American American, meaning Irish American. And then there was one room with me. And thank God I got the single room. Because remember, I got a bunk bed. So technically, the goal and the role of the room was to have 2 beds on the same one. And I managed to finesse my way around that and to have a room for myself. But the guys that lived in the room next to mine, the 2 Americans, one of them was fine. His name was Andrew. Andrew, whoever you are, I salute you. I guarantee that this guy is doing software engineering somewhere. He was just chill. The other one, I don't remember his name, was a piece of shit. Where the Chinese roommate was selfish, but he was okay to live with. That guy was a pig. And by pig, I mean that one of his favorite moves to pull was he would come home blast out drunk from his partying. He would go into the bathroom, he would take off his dirty bleachers because he would shit himself. He would get so drunk he would shit himself, and then he would just leave the shitty bleachers in the middle of the bathroom for me to find when I woke up in the morning. So an almost monthly occurrence for me was going into the bathroom to take a morning piss, and there it is in the middle of the room, just shitty bleachers right there. And I thought to myself, like if it happens to you once, okay, I understand. It's disgusting, but I understand. But to make it a habit, like at no point do you think to yourself, maybe I should stop shitting my pants when I go out drinking. No, that guy didn't think like this. He was also the type of person, and I'm certain that you've lived or known people like this, who spend hours in the shower. And by hours, I'm not meaning like, oh, he spent 25 minutes. Hours. I would look at the clock. He would get in the shower at 10 a.m. and leave at noon. So I don't know what he was doing in here, but the water was running the entire time. And so naturally, that's horribly inconvenient. It's a dorm. We only have one shower for 4 people. Like, I don't think the Chinese guys were showering, so that's good enough, but we still have one shower for 3 people. And the thing that this guy was doing too, he was such a piece of shit, was that, of course, he was skipping class. So what he would do is that when I would have to wake up and take my shower because I had a job and I had classes to take, he would wait for my alarm clock to go off. I would hear him jump off his bunk bed because he was on the top bunk and run to the bathroom to be able to take it before me. And he would then proceed to take 2 hour long showers. So you know what I had to do to like strategize my way around this bullshit? I had to fake him out. So every single day I had fake alarms set up to throw him off my game so that I would like set an alarm at 8 a.m. knowing that I needed to shower at 10 a.m. so that he would wake up at 8. Like, why do I have to pull all of this nonsense? What is this? Like, is this an extra curriculum? And am I learning to become a spy? That year in the dorm was insane. I didn't like any of these guys. But yeah, that was my first day and then also my first year in America. Let's see if I forgot to tell something. Oh yeah, the bridge. I forgot about the bridge. So the bridge. I told you guys that the bridge was dangerous to cross. Indeed, it was dangerous to cross. So I told you that I was broke and that my mom was sending me money. But back then, for some reason, we couldn't send it via card or like banks. So she had to do Western Union. Les blédards dans le chat ont une connaissance approfondie de Western Union. What is Western Union? It's the thing that essentially like people from like South America or Africa or Middle East use to send money back home. Usually that's how it's done. You, in America, send money back home and they collect it at the Western Union. I don't mean to be polemical or politically incorrect here, but that also means that a Western Union in general is not a place where you find the highest ranks of society. I say that as someone who went to Western Union, so I was part of that like low stratus. But it depended on the neighborhood. There was actually a very good neighborhood with a Western Union. The issue is that every time I went, the woman who worked there told me, oh yeah, wires to like a foreign country, they don't work. Come back later. Come to find out, this woman was essentially just racist or didn't want to do her job, and she pretended that the wires to foreign countries didn't work because she didn't want all of the dirty rubber in her store. That's essentially that. But this means that I had to find another way because I was going to collect cash. A Western Union, the way it works is you show up with like a document that proves that you are who you say you are with a code and everything, and they give you the amount of money that the family member sent you. So my mom sent me all of that information, and I find a Western Union, but it's across the bridge. I get a friend to take me by car to be more safe, and we park in front of it, and I get into the Western Union. I enter, I'm the only white person there. I go up to the register, a very nice black lady. She looks at me first, like she's like, I don't know what the fuck you're doing here, but you don't belong. She takes the paper, she looks at the document, she looks at it, she puts it down, she like slaps it down. She looks at me in the eyes, she goes like this. She goes like this. I go closer, she's like, listen to me. I'm going to run the money, I'm going to give it to you. When I give it to you, you run. You take the money and you run to your car. You do not stop, you run. She runs the documents, the money goes, every single person's head in the store, poop, poop, they're all looking. She gives me the money in an envelope, I grab it, and we run to the car. And we get in the car and we leave. I found out later out why. The Western Union was popping. There was a bunch of people in here, but no one was doing anything. There was no transactions going. These people were not sending money, they were not receiving money. The reason why they were here is they were scoping out. So what they would do is they would sit in the Western Union, and when someone came in, someone like me, to collect a lot of money, what they would do is they would text the details and the characteristics of the person to their accomplices around the Western Union. And when you would come out with your money, you would get mugged because they knew exactly who to target. Of course, for me, the description was fairly easy. White guy, big nose. Like it was a one-to-one description of the only person that looked like this in the entire neighborhood. So I was fucked. And I was lucky enough that this lady was looking out for me, and she was like, okay, I've been working here. I know what these guys are doing with their phones. The second they hear the cash money and the amount of money you're going to collect, you're a target. So run. Thank you, black lady. You did a tremendous job because I did not get mugged. And I managed to use the money to buy food. So that was also an interesting experience that I had in America. Okay. All right. I'm going to take a small break to take a piece, and I will be right there. Yo. Yeah, I'm a fast pisser. That's what they say about me. That kid, he pisses fast. Hope you wash your hands. I never wash my hands. Oh. Perfect. That hair is keeping me warm. It is keeping me warm. Okay. I hope that was a joke. Not a joke. Okay. I never joke. I'm always serious. Okay. Next, we said after America, I'm going to actually unbutton. After America, Thursday in America, we're going to be talking about academia because I was a teacher and I was working at a university. So my relationship with American academia. First, it was a culture shock because you have to understand that French colleges are horribly easy. For the most part, if you get a C, you won't get a degree, right? Even a master's. Whereas in America, that's not the case. In America, if you want your master's, you have to be around B, B plus. If you have less than that, they essentially tell you that you have to take more semesters until you get the grades, which I think is tremendous. But it also means that it's very difficult to the point where the program that I was in had like a 45% success rate. So 45%, so 55% of the people that went into the program that paid tens of thousands of dollars to get the masters were essentially told at the end, yeah, sorry, you don't have the level for this master, you suck too much. And this was actually conveyed by the teachers because the main teacher, I don't know what you call this in America, but like the person responsible for the program, one day, this is my third semester, I'm this close to getting the master's. It's the middle of winter, I'm like burnt out. She takes me apart, takes me aside, looks at me and tells me, hey, you know, I don't think you're cut out for this. You should drop out. What the fuck? Like when you're told this by someone who she worked for the UN, she was a recognized specialist in the field, she had all of the acclamations in the world, respected by everyone, the dean, it hurts. You think, okay, I really must suck. Come to find out, she told this to everyone. It was a move that she liked to pull to see if people were determined or not to get the masters. Or regardless of how performant you were and how well you are doing, she would tell you, hey, you should drop out. Because her mindset was, if you do drop out, then you don't have what it takes. So I don't want you to have the masters. You would never see that in France. If a teacher attempted to do that in France, they would get fired. It would be like, oh, you're like, what are you trying to be? Like, you're trying to create excellence. How dare you? Fuck you. So that's like to give you a broad idea of what I was doing in terms of the masters and like the ambiance that was going on here. After that, there was also the classes that I was taking. American classes are very different. And one thing that is very different, for example, is citation style, like MLA style, Chicago style. In France, that doesn't exist. In France, you say, this author said this, and that's it. No one is going to ask you to tell, like, to put the reference of the book or the page number or the year. No one cares. It's not a thing. In America, if you cite something and you don't quote it properly, that's points off. Like, it's wrong. And to get used to that as someone who wasn't trained like this is really hard. And I remember sometimes it made sense with references, sometimes it just didn't. Like, I remember writing a paper about basketball, and my paper was on the social dynamics of basketball. At some point in the paper, I write, basketball is a team sport that is played 5 against 5. The teacher, like, underlined this and wrote source. And I remember sitting down with my copy thinking, source? Source of what? Why am I to prove that basketball is played 5 against 5? Who am I supposed to quote? Like, how does that make any sense? This is beyond fucking ridiculous. And I remember I like tried to plead my case for months and she just wouldn't budge. And at some point I just gave up and I cited like some random like guy in the like 1880s that said basketball is a gentleman's sport, play 5 against 5. And she was like, yeah, that's the source. So stupid. Like, it's common knowledge. That's common knowledge. Why do I need a source? Water dehydrates. Well, that's actually wrong. So water hydrates, source. Like, it's stupid. Anyways, just to say, passive aggressiveness was like everywhere in academia in America. Another example that I have is I had a teacher who was constantly gobbling my nuts. That guy loved me. His name was James. And I would show up to his class every day, 5 minutes late, because his class started after my class. So my class was done at like noon, and I would show up at his class that started at noon 05. And he never said shit. Like, he would shake my hand, we would say hello, never said shit. Come to find out at the end of my semester, that little weasel rat bastard took away points every time I was late. And I didn't have access to attendance. So I found out at the end that I almost flunked out of his class because he took away points. And I remember I was so mad, I confronted him in his office and I was like, what the fuck is this? And the guy was like, well, you are late. And I was like, yeah, couldn't you just tell me the first time you're late and it's docking points? What even is the point? And I think that the guy just enjoyed the power trip of this. Anyways, all of that leads to the time I got in trouble for saying the N word, which is a hell of an introduction. But anyways, the way this worked and this entire story worked, you'll see that I didn't pull a PewDiePie. It wasn't a gamer moment at all. Although it would be funny if it was, but it wasn't. So essentially, what happened is that I had two colleagues, one that was gay and one that was black, and we got along. And these were the only people that I like. They were really fun to be around, and so we would like mess around and have fun, etc. And one time we were talking about the movie Mulan. If you guys have watched the movie Mulan, it is at some point that there is a quote that we personally found very funny where I think it's the dragon Wushu who says, "Shame on you, shame on your cow." And this is like, when you have a group of friends, you have like running jokes and running gags that you repeat. And so whenever one of us would do something shameful, we would go, "Shame on you, shame on your cow." And don't ask me why, but I thought it would be very funny to take that joke and to, in a sense, like staple it with another joke. Have you ever heard the joke and the meme, free my N word X? So free my N word Johnny or whatever. For some reason, I thought it was the pinnacle of humor to combine the two. And so I posted on Facebook in a private chat, free my N word cow, as in like, shame on you, shame on your cow, free my N word cow. This, which was clearly a joke, was taken out of context, cropped out, and sent to the dean of my department. The dean of my department was a white woman married to a black man. So imagine how it looked out of context. So one day, I get summoned into the office and I'm told, "Hey, what is this?" Et c'est dans ces moments-là que tu transpires un peu. T'as la goutte. Sweat. I'm thinking I'm fucked. They're going to fire me. Like, it's the perfect storm. She has mixed kids. She's married to a black man. She's a white woman, so that's the perfect trifecta. I'm a white man who was caught writing the N word. And of course, it was the soft N word, not the hard N word. But still, it's there with my name next to it. And I was like, I don't have an explanation. It was a joke. And thank God she was like cool with it. And she was like, "That's fine. Like, okay, just don't do it again because understand that like you represent the university, and if this goes out, etc." So I'm like, okay, thank God. But then I'm thinking, who is the rat that took that screenshot and sent it? And so I went on the quest to figure it out. Come to find out, the person who did this was an ex-teacher that still, for some reason, like worked in administration or whatever. He was a busybody, useless bitch. And that guy was essentially stalking my Facebook page to eventually run into something that he could use against me. This guy, when I had him face to face, was of course all sweet. "Oh, comment ça va? Comment ça va? Comment ça va, fils de pute? Hein, c'est toujours les mêmes. Hein? Passive aggressiveness." And this is the reason why I didn't stay in academia, because it pissed me off. Everyone was like this. It was always backstabbing and people repeating what you said but twisting it to make you look bad. It was just nonstop this. It was very childish. But yeah, so that was a stupid quote. Passive aggressive teachers getting in trouble because of this. Culture of pretending to be busy. Another thing that really pissed me off. So America has this thing going on, especially in academia, where you are going to be judged on the performance you put out. So it's not about being a good teacher. It's about looking like a good teacher. It's not about giving good lessons. It's about looking like you give good lessons. And so this created a culture where everyone was constantly looking busy, but we all knew we were doing jack shit, because preparing lessons and correcting pages and papers, it doesn't take that long, and it's busy work. But everyone around me was really good at it, and I wasn't. I was the guy who was watching League of Legends videos on his work computer when everyone else was working. What people didn't see is that when everyone went to bed, I was in the office until 3 a.m. and I was working hard on my stuff. It's just that these people were resting at home. I didn't have a home. I was essentially homeless at the time. I lived in the shitty-ass dorms. And so for me, my office was my home. So I had a mini fridge in the office. I cut my hair in my office. I took shits in the bathroom of the office. I had a microwave in the office. I ate every single meal in the office. It was like the place where I spent 20 hours a day. I only went home to sleep. Literally, I paid rent to have a place to put a bed. And if I could have put a bed in my office, you bet your ass I would have done it. I tried, but at the end of the day, they didn't let me because of like safety issues or whatever the fuck. Anyways, I'm in the office all the time, but I don't look like I'm working. And so what ended up happening is that eventually, when I went back home to France, big mistake, and there was someone that needed to be cut for the budget to work. They cut me because they felt, who can we get rid of that is not going to create any issues? I know, let's get rid of the French kid who's not even there anymore, who doesn't know shit about American law. That is a fail-proof plan. So one day, I'm literally in France. I still vividly remember I was reading Hajime no Ippo, and I was like procrastinating on like picking my classes. I get an email essentially telling me, "Hey, don't come back." Or actually, no, worse than that. They told me, please come back to give back your keys because I took my keys off the office and then just leave. So they wanted me to pay €1,000 to come back to America to give them a key and then leave. And I remember reading this, and honestly, like my life came crashing down because if you missed the story time of last time, I didn't have a French degree because my French degree was nullified. They lost it. Now I just spent a year and a half for an American degree that I'm also not going to get because I just got fired. And again, keep in mind that I got a full scholarship, but the scholarship was through the teaching I was doing. It's called a TA-ship. They were paying for my studies because I was teaching for them. No TA-ship, no studies. I don't have $20,000 a year for that degree. It's not possible. So I was like, oh, well, now I was 22, 23. I have nothing to show for it. And I'm starting again from zero. So I was horribly depressed, of course, and I didn't have a recourse. So what I did is, and this is something that I still do to this day, I just made as much noise as possible. So I sent emails left and fucking right to this office and that bureau being, this is happening to me. Is this normal? Is this legal? And luckily for me, the lady that was in charge of the Bureau of International Students was a gem. She was a powerful woman who knew that this was bullshit and who liked me. And this is, by the way, the reason why charm and playing up your charm with people is so much more important than intelligence, than work that you put in, and talent. It's everything. Because this woman, fix your button. This woman went to bat for me. She sent a full file to the French department that fired me saying, hey, he has a contract with you, you clowns. If he decides to sue the university, you will be out a few $100,000 because I will make sure that the university takes it out of your budget. And so when they received that, they were like, oh shit, he just now has someone on his side that knows the law. And so they had to take me back. But I wasn't aware of that. I was in my depression state. And so in my mind, I was going back to give my keys back. It was also the issue that I was renting a room, and so I had to like get all of my shit and like end the lease. It was crazy. But my flight back to America, the saddest flight in the history of mankind, I flew back with an empty luggage. Because why do I need stuff in my luggage? It was just there so that I could put my shit and then come back. This is how life works, and this is how destiny and fate works. 20 minutes before I leave the house to take my flight, on a whim, do not ask me why. On a whim, I check my emails and I just received an email saying, hey, look at that email that was sent to you a few days ago. You got your job back. And that's an email from the woman from the Bureau of International Students who is forwarding to me an email that I got from the head and the dean of the French department, who, like a complete fucking asshole, replied to an old email I sent him that, of course, never made it at the top of my inbox, saying I had my job back, but I had to say yes or no. This woman was like, here is the email, say yes. And in that moment, I'm looking at my mom, who, by the way, poor lady, was like, I'm getting my son back. And then last second, it's like, nope, he's leaving again. Ciao. So she was like, God bless my mom. She was like, yeah, go, like, do it. Say yes. Who cares? Just say yes. So I say yes. I have to like pack my bag in like 20 minutes in a panic. And I remember my mom being like, I can't fucking believe this. And we go to the airport and she says goodbye. And I arrived in America and they like played horrible games with me, like messing with me like it was my fault. But essentially, what they attempted to do was they tried to cut me because these losers weren't able to recruit enough people for the French department for the next year. So instead of cutting their losses and being like, okay, well, then we fucked up, we'll still find something for you, they decided, no, let's just cut the French kid. Who cares? So I was able to come back. I couldn't get my old job back because there wasn't enough students to teach. By the way, they tried to pull some bullshit saying, well, you're a bad teacher anyways. And that was their justification for cutting me when I had all of the teacher reports by the students saying I was amazing, which of course I was. I was the only French speaker. Every other person that was on the staff that taught French were American. They parlaient comme ça. Moi, je vais vous apprendre le français. Tu vas te faire enculer, oui. You don't even speak French. Some of these people didn't even speak French and they were teaching French, and I'm the one getting sacked. That's bullshit. But, anyways, I ended up working as an assistant developer for material. So instead of what I was doing is I was creating the curriculum that these doofus would use. So it was a win-win. I was improving the experience of every single student, and I was also keeping my job. I was working for a very nice Chinese lady. Shout out, I'm not going to say her name because she's very famous in the US, who took very good care of me, who realized that I was a very hard worker. And so she made sure that I was well taken care of and I kept my scholarship. And because of her, I was able to graduate with an American master for free. And that is quite something because my master is worth $70,000. And I didn't have, and still to this day, do not have $75,000. So that's the end of the story. It was pretty good. But to go back to the French department and the complete disorganization and the fact that I was way too good for them, when I showed up to America, I was supposed to be a TA, meaning teaching assistant. I was supposed to assist a teacher in a classroom. Instead, because they were out of staff and they didn't want to pay for a full-fledged teacher, they essentially made me a full-fledged teacher. So I was taking care of 3 classrooms. I had a total of 90 students, and they paid me $750 a month. Because, of course, the scholarship. So the scholarship was making up for it, but still, like, they really had it good with me. And the funny thing is that when I went to the USA, I was flying with another girl that was also a French woman that was supposed to teach. And when she showed up and she realized that she would also be a full-fledged teacher, she flunked out. So she told them, fuck no, I'm not doing that. And with her, they were very nice. Instead, they took her classroom and they gave the classroom to me. So now I was dealing with twice the workload. It was quite the experience, but if I have to do it again, I'll do it again. So that was, oh yeah, and then I also have to talk to you guys about well, the fact that I was spending all of my nights in the office and the consequences. So I was a night owl, and I still am to this day. Like, now that I have my own business, quote unquote, I mean, yeah, it is a business. I work until like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. every single night because that's when I'm the most productive. And back then I did the same thing, but my lifestyle back then was fucked up because it was my first time living alone, first time eating whatever I wanted. But at the same time, what would happen is that because I started teaching at 1 p.m., all of my classes were from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m., there was no point in me waking up. So my entire life was moved 5 hours. So I would wake up at 11 a.m. every day. I would do schoolwork, I would cook, I would eat. I would start teaching at 1. From 1 to 9 p.m., I would do schoolwork and I would teach my classes and take care of my students. Then at 9 p.m., I would go to the gym. I would train until like 11 p.m. At 11 p.m., I would go home, not go home. I would go to the office and eat in the office. And then from like midnight to 3 to 4 a.m., I would work on my masters in the office and then I would leave, which means that I spent a lot of time outside when no one is there. And I saw a bunch of very interesting things. When everyone is sleeping, there are things that go bump in the night. So one of the things that I saw was at one point, I'm walking down the street and ahead of me, I see something white and low to the ground coming. And it's like, it's almost a scene out of a movie where I'm looking at the horizon and I see this like white thing that's like almost galloping towards me. And from the distance, I cannot really like understand what it is. It looks like a dog to me. It looks like a white dog. But why the fuck would a white dog be on the streets at 4 a.m.? And it's coming towards me, and the more it's coming, the more I'm thinking, dude, is this a wolf? Because the region where I live, there are wolves. And so I was thinking, like, what the fuck would a wolf be doing here? And the more it came towards me, the more I realized it was too small to be a wolf, but it didn't quite look like a dog. And it literally just like walked, I shit you not, like past me, but this close to me. It didn't try to avoid me at all. And it was a coyote. And what I found out later is that this campus was full of rabbits. And so the coyotes were hunting the rabbits at night, and they were so desensitized to humans that they didn't really care. So he just walked past me. Another thing that I saw is one time, I'm again walking up the same street, and across the street, I see what looks like a baby. I don't know if you've ever seen the very famous Dave Chappelle skit when he talks about a baby on the corner of the street who sells dope, who sells weed, and he's like, "Go home, baby! Like you have your whole life ahead of you." And the baby goes, "I'm selling weed, motherfucker." Well, it's sort of the same. Where I'm like, "Is that a baby?" And so across the street, there's no one. I'm like, "Baby, yo, baby!" And the thing, because I don't know what it is, looks up and looks at me, but then looks down again. And the more I'm coming towards it, the more I'm starting to see that it's like hunched over something that it's eating, but I can't make out why. And what exactly? So I keep walking. And when I'm exactly parallel to it and I turn around, I realize that what I thought was a baby is actually the fattest raccoon I've ever seen in my life, sitting on its butt, eating a big ass part of pizza. So it was like hunched over with its tiny raccoon hands, eating pizza. And like from afar, it looked like a baby. So that was one. And then the last thing, and this was a little bit dangerous, don't do it at home. I like to look at the moon. Don't ask me why. When there's a full moon, I like to like stare at it for like 10 minutes. And back then I did the same thing. And since I was at night alone, I did it from places that are really, really creepy. So for example, there was a fountain I really liked where I would step on the fountain and look up, and I would look at the moon for like 30 minutes. And one time, as I'm doing that, I start to see lights coming from behind me, and I hear a car rolling towards me. And I don't react, but naturally, who the fuck would like roll around in a car in the middle of a college campus if not police, campus police? So I hear the door slam and I hear, "Sir, are you okay, sir?" And I realize that in that moment, I look like someone who's on drugs because I'm standing on top of a tall fountain like this, looking up, and they can't see my face. They only see my back. And so I don't know. I was like pulling what is the name of that movie? A Blair Witch Project. I didn't even turn around. I just answered, "Yes, I am fine," and they just left. They didn't even like question it. They just left. I didn't even look at their faces. Don't do that to police in America. That's not a very good idea. Yeah. So that is the end of the story of First Day in America, Academia in America, and then Le Fou de la Fontaine. Je parle au Fou de la Fontaine pour qu'il ne me tue pas. And then there is the ghost story. So now we have everything set up, we have the context, and I can tell you about the time where I saw a ghost. So that college campus, the way it was organized was that it was 4 towers: north, south, east, west. And in the middle, there was the hall where you walk in and you can enter an elevator or escalator to get to your tower. I lived in the south tower, and it was one of the oldest towers, and it was famous for poltergeist activity, meaning that when I lived there, oftentimes I would go to bed in my bunk bed and I would be in bed like this. So picture NH in bed with the blue blanket. I'm like this, and I would hear, but on the not on the door, but on the side of the walls, high up, so close to my face. And when it happened the first few times, I was like, yeah, like, it's just the neighbors being dickheads because like my neighbors were party animals and they would party all the time. Or maybe it's just like upstairs neighbors. I don't know. All I knew is that someone was knocking. And I figured out with time that it wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't people. The reason why I found out was that later on, something happened to me in a laundromat. And what led me to the laundromat is that the way the towers were organized was that South Tower, where I lived, was garbage because there was nothing in the tower except old dorms. East Tower was the most new tower. It was the one that was constructed last. If you don't want to get spoiled, don't read the chat because a lot of people already know that story. So East Tower was the new one, and because of that, they had an entertainment area with TVs, with games, and they also had a brand new laundromat, and it was huge. Like it was always at capacity, but it ran very smoothly. So my little ritual as a stinky boy was that every single Sunday, I would take off my dirty clothes, put it in the washing machine, run the washing machine, watch TV, which when you watch American TV, you essentially watch commercials because they have commercials breaks every 10 minutes. Then I would collect my shit and I would go back home. That was my ritual on Sunday. Except that one Sunday, I show up to the washing machine place and it's packed. The laundromat is packed. Every single laundry machine is full, and there are people queuing up to use it next. So I'm seeing this thinking, what the fuck? And what the fuck was that half of them were out of commission. So now you had 50%, it ran at 50% capacity. And because of that, it wasn't able to operate properly. And now I'm faced with a conundrum. Do I just stink for the next week because I didn't have much clothes? Or do I wait? And I don't want to do either of these things. But I'm lucky enough that I hear two guys talking and I'm eavesdropping. I eavesdrop a lot in my stories. I think I'm a bit nosy. I eavesdrop and I hear that they're talking about another laundromat. And they're speaking about it in such terms. Well, one goes, well, if we don't want to wait, we can always go to North Tower. And the other guy laughs like, ah, yeah, totally. Like it's a big joke. And the way I interpreted that love back then was that this North Tower laundromat was a secret. It was something that wasn't widely known. And these two guys were making fun of the idiots that were queuing up to use machines when there were machines available in the North Tower. So I hear this and I think, dude, I'm so fucking smart. I'm going to go to North Tower. I'm going to get my laundry done. I go to North Tower. The entry to North Tower is very interesting because the place where I used to study has a shit ton of snow. And as you might know or might not know, when it snows, they put salt on the ground to prevent the cars from sliding, which attaches to the sole of your shoes and then dirties the floors. Oftentimes, every single floor would be ultra super dirty, but not North Tower. The floors of North Tower were like crispy fucking clean, which is not normal because it was in the middle of winter. The, the walls of North Tower are also empty of any signs or messages. If you go to a college campus, especially a tower, there are placards, there are like announcements for a summer party, for whatever, everywhere. Not here. The walls were all clean, but the entire place was clearly very old. Now I'm trying to locate this laundromat. It's my first time in North Tower. I also noticed that there is no one. And that's weird because there's no way no one knows that there's a laundromat in North Tower. So why am I the only idiot with my luggage? Because yes, back then I didn't have a basket for luggage. So what I would do is I would put my dirty laundry in the luggage. So I tried to locate this famed laundromat with the help of no one. First, I noticed that the elevator is out of commission. It doesn't work. Then I noticed a door, and it's a door that goes down. And usually, with old laundromats, they're always located in the basement. It was true also with the East Tower. So I think, okay, this must be where I'm supposed to go. But I also noticed that there is no interrupter, meaning that you can't turn on the light. And I think, well, I'm sure I should not going to go down in the dark stairs like this. But when I take my first step, a light turns on. And this click is the noise that the light makes. There are bulbs at a regular interval that go click, 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 click when you walk, and they have like motion sensors in a way. So I think, cool, grab my luggage, go down the stairs. As I get to the middle of the stairs, I realize something. If you're no longer moving, the lights turn off, but they turn off very quickly. Like we're talking 5 to 10 seconds. And so as I'm going down into the darkness, because again, I can't see in front of me because there's no motion, the lights behind me turn and they turn down. So as I'm going down, I keep looking like over my shoulder and I see that rectangle of light that is the door I just took. And I'm just like diving to the darkness and it's dark behind me. So that's already fairly scary. Like I'm already shooting bricks and nothing happened. I get at the end of the thing, the stairway is now entirely dark. And I enter a corridor. And the way, like, to make you understand, like, the way the washing machine works, you go down the stairs, there is a straight corridor, and then it angles. And you enter into a big rectangular room with a wall in between, and the wall is made of washing machines. So you see that in your head, stairs, corridor, turn, and then that room is a rectangle with a wall in the middle. I enter the room. That room is not motion sensor. It's like flips of the light. I turn on the light, and the lights are creepy as fuck. There are these white lights. And at this moment, I can't quite put my finger on what they remind me of, but I know that they look like something I've seen before that makes me uncomfortable. And I also noticed something else is that there's no noise, which is not normal because the laundromat is always noisy. There's always the tumble of the washing machine and the dryer. There is not a single washing machine or dryer going. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, they must be broken. Because what other explanation do we have? Why is no one using this when the other one is out of commission? And on top of that, I'm also starting to like look back and think, okay, East Tower is good, sure, but it's always packed with people. So no one uses this? Like, why? Come, I check to see if the washing machines work. They seem to be in order. They take my card, you have your student card and you flip it and you have your credit. They seem to work digitally, everything is fine. So I open my luggage. I take my my garbage. I was going to say my clothes. I put it in the washing machine. Close the washing machine. As I close it, the little window, I see a reflection. Someone behind me, a pale face behind me. I turn. I look around. No one. So I'm thinking, oh, okay. I'm like, okay. I go to start the washing machine. It won't work. So I'm thinking, okay, that's why. Like, logically speaking, that's why it's not working. Go to open the washing machine, it won't let me. It just won't let me. It feels like there's something on the other side, like a hand that is grabbing the other side and pulling as I'm pulling. So now, like, all of my clothes are in the thing, and I am just like stuck with an empty luggage, and I can't take it back, and it won't fucking run. So I'm thinking, okay, what the fuck? I hear behind me click, and I think, oh, someone else. So I'm not going to be alone. Someone else is coming down to do their laundry, so maybe they're going to be able to explain to me what the fuck is happening here. And I hear the click, 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 like someone is coming down. So I'm not really paying attention. As my attention is diverted again, I hear slam, slam, slam. And on the other side of the wall, a few washing machines have slammed shut, and they start to run. And they all start to run. I go around. Yes, at this point, you will say, you are stupid. Why the fuck didn't you run? I was in disbelief. I go around the wall, and there, of course, is no one. But every single time I turn my head, I feel like there is someone in the corner of the room. There's always like someone in my peripheral visions. So I feel, of course, horribly uncomfortable at this point. The washing machine are running, though. I come around and I try to open my washing machine one last time, and it doesn't work. At this point, I hear the last click of the stairs. It's a long ass stair. And I'm turned like this, and I look down the corridor. No one. And I can see the bottom of the stairs. Again, I explained to you the way it hooks around. I can see the bottom of the stairs from where I'm standing. There's no one, but the lights are on. It's impossible. Because if someone like did a prank and went down, they would have to go back up. So I would hear the clicks again. I heard nothing. It's like as if someone went down and then disappeared. When that happened, I was like, you know what, fuck that. I took my luggage, I closed it, and I left. I like literally just like a bitch. I left. I was like, I'm done. And I go up the stairs. Click, 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 click. And when I'm out of the space, you know how it happens, like you're out of the space and like you feel a bit more brave. I think to myself, dude, this is ridiculous. Like you're just like you're imagining things. There are no ghosts. You're fine. I go down again. I go down, and when I go down, I'm able to open the washing machine that I couldn't open, and I get my clothes back. The washing machines and the dryers on the other side have stopped running. So I get my shit again. I select another washing machine again. I put my clothes in it. I close it, and it runs. It runs perfectly well. As it starts to run, another washing machine starts to run on my left. And this one, and this is something that I did not notice because I was not paying attention, this one was already closed. When I entered the washing machine, every single washing machine was open. Every single one. Now they're all closed. They closed during the lapse of time where I went up the stairs and down the stairs. That washing machine has something in it. The other washing machines that ran, they ran empty. You can hear an empty washing machine. This one, there is something. I hear something tumbling in the washing machine. The way these washing machines work is, at least in this place, in the USA, the washing machines have a space where you can see through, not the dryers. So I think to myself, you're going to look. You're there, you're going to look. Look through it. This is not, I don't recommend you ever do that if you run into the paranormal. I go in front of the washing machine and I look. And what I see inside is just dark. Just complete pitch darkness. I can't see through it. I can see through every single other washing machine. They're all clear and transparent, and I can see they're empty. This one, it's like there's just a dark wall that prevents me from seeing through. But I hear what's inside. And what it sounds like, and I've never heard this before, but this is what my imagination told me is, it sounds like a severed head bouncing around in a washing machine. So I left the laundromat. I came back to get my wet clothes. I did not run the dryer, and I just wore wet clothes and moldy clothes for the rest of the week because I wasn't going to go back. And after this, I never went back. This is the first and last time I ever went to North Tower. I never returned. Come to find out, I wasn't the only person who experienced that, because North Tower was famous for being haunted. And this was something that was widely known. And this is why East Tower had to be built. And this is why I'm telling you that I have additional information, because I looked into it. East Tower had to be built, even though North Tower was not filled at capacity, because students refused to live in North Tower because they were 2 cases of suicide in North Tower, people who claimed that they were being possessed and that they saw apparitions. This also connects with the mesh. They had to install meshes around the windows to prevent students from jumping to their death. That tower to this day is still empty. No one wants to live in this. No one uses the laundromat. There are so many people who have experienced what I've experienced. The thing is that I didn't know. But what I also didn't know was the origin of North Tower. Because South Tower was built, East Tower was built, West Tower was built, North Tower wasn't built. North Tower was a pre-existing infrastructure and building. And what it was before was an hospital. And guess what they stored in the basement. The basement was the morgue. And the places and the wall where the washing machines are nowadays used to be these things where you put the corpses, these drawers where you put the corpses. Why the fuck would they build here? On an old hospital where people died? Of course it's going to be fucking haunted. Didn't you learn from building on like burial grounds of Native Americans? Why the fuck would anyone do that? And so it's just, and this also like puts the post-Poltergeist activity into context. It also puts something else into context, which is that oftentimes when I would walk back home at 4 a.m., everything is connected, and I would look up at my tower, South Tower, I would see my window, and then above my window, I would see other rooms with bright lights. And it was like yellow, purple, and white lights that would like pulsate. And I knew for a fact that I didn't have any upstairs neighbor because no one lived above me. So what were the lights? Your guess is as good as mine, but essentially, yeah, I figured out from that point on that, yeah, this place is fucking haunted. And the second I could move out, I moved out. And no one wanted to live in that place. This is the reason why they had to install the policy. Because without the policy, no student wanted to live there. So they forced first-year students to live there for at least a year to recoup the cost of building these stupid towers. Because at the end of the day, who would want to live in a place that's haunted? So yeah, that was the ghost story. Yeah, it's this story. Even if you've heard it again, like it's always a timeless classic. I will of course not tell you what university it is. Some people have managed to guess it because it's actually fairly famous for being haunted. Okay, so that's done. First day in America, that's done. Ghost story, that's done. So now we have the wife story. We have my social awkwardness stories when I got banned from a sushi place. This one is funny. My job working for the French government. My childhood. So when I almost killed a guy. This one is fast. And the many times I almost died. We have a very few stories left, guys. Am I late? Yes, you're late, but it's fine because you'll be able to watch the replay tomorrow or tonight. Wife story, French government, wife or sushi. Oh, what a conundrum, wife or sushi. Wife story. Okay, let's do the sushi because I know that I don't know if Foxarium is still here, but it would be too sad if we ended without Foxarium getting his story because he's been waiting for it for like a month. So let's do the sushi story. It's a very fun story. It's a very short story, but it's going to make you laugh. So sushi. My relationship with sushis. I love sushi. I absolutely love sushi. The issue is that in the US, it's horribly expensive. So I usually eat sushi once a year here. But in France, sushi is affordable, especially because we have what is called le buffet à volonté. So the way it works is that there are certain sushi places where it's not like you get like 2 rolls or like 5 nigiri. You get unlimited sushi, but it's done in a way that is very smart, where they bring you, so you sit down at the table, they bring you a piece of paper with the names of the sushi, you write the quantity that you want, they take it back, and then they bring it to you to your table. The reason why this is so smart is because anyone who is bulking right now knows that when you eat a lot of food, it's always better to eat it fast. Because if you wait too much time in between bites or in between plates, well, you stop being hungry. This is also why they tend to recommend, if you want to lose weight, to chew your food and to eat very slowly. These places don't want you to eat a lot because it costs them too much money, because you pay between 15 to 18 euros. And so if you eat more than that, they don't make a profit. So what they do is they delay the next plate of food to make sure that you lose your appetite as much as possible. And they're really good at this. Like they will pretend you don't exist. Like you'll be like, you literally have to like extend your arm in their face with the piece of paper to get them to take it. And then, of course, they take their time to bring you the food. So you usually spend an hour there. And it's almost impossible to go through all of the services. They give you 5. Every single time they give you the sheet, you can get 5 of each. So if you do the math, this means that it comes in pairs. So you can get 10 of each sushi every single time they come. So if you want, you can get 100 sushi every time a guy comes, you can get 500 sushi. You quickly understand that there's an issue with that method. If you did that in America, people would just doggy bag the food and you'd be fucked. So they have a no doggy bag policy. And on top of that, for each piece of food, so each sushi or yakitori that you don't eat, it's 2 euros. So if you try to be a pig and you get tons of sushi and you leave 10, you pay your tab plus 20 euros. They say it's to prevent waste, it's to make as much money as possible, of course, and I don't blame them for that. So the game is you have to strategize as much as possible and you have to make sure that you get just enough food, but not so much that you won't be able to finish. I was running with a gang, okay? I was running with a crew, and our thing was not selling dope. Our thing was not stabbing old ladies. It was running these places dry. We would show up with my crew after lifting weights. We would have fasted for 24 hours and we would eat them out of business. And they fucking hated us. But they couldn't do anything. We didn't do anything illegal. And so there was this particular place, and I'm going to name it because it would be too funny if some of you guys know that place. Le Sushi de Port Royal. Le Sushi de Port Royal was a all-you-can-eat sushi buffet that was in Port Royal, Paris, in the 5th arrondissement, 5th district. And one day we showed up with my crew. We were 5. There was 5 of us. We sit at the table and we do our thing. So we eat and we eat and we eat, and we are eating a lot. Last round comes. We make it to the last round. We've already been there for 2 hours. The waiters fucking hate us, okay? Last round. They bring the piece. What do you do when it's the last round? You pig out. You become ambitious. And so what we did is we said, you know what? For the last round, we're going to max out on yakitori. And yakitori is these little like kebabs of like chicken and beef and whatever. It's delicious. We get 75. We get 75 yakitori. A pyramid. When I tell you they brought up a pyramid of yakitori to our table, it was like up to my eyes. They bring that. If you do the calculus, there's 5 of us. Yeah, if we each eat 15, that's doable. We start to eat. I have 3 friends who smoke. At some point, they eat like maybe 5 or 10 each, like something like this. At the end of that, they're like, hey, we're going to smoke. In France, this means we're not coming back. The meal is over. When you light up a cigarette, that is the end of the meal if you're a smoker in France. I'm left with one guy. The reason why he didn't leave is because he doesn't smoke. In front of us is like maybe 45 yakitori. 45. So now we have to eat 25 each. This is the end of the meal. 25 yakitori is easy if you're hungry. We've already eaten like 20, 30 sushi each, soup, everything. Our stomachs are full. This is an ordeal now. I'm looking at him in the eyes. I'm like, hey, Hugo. Il s'appelle Hugo. This is the final stand. Don't fuck up. Because if we can't finish this, we have to pay for every single one, and I'm not paying an extra $30. We start to eat. He eats 5, stands up, runs to the bathroom to puke. He's done. He cannot eat anymore. He's done. I'm left with what is essentially like 35 yakitori. It's still a fucking mountain. I can't finish that. I'm thinking, okay, I have to finagle my way out of this. The waitress, it was a man, comes, and I give him the piece of paper. I'm like, hey, there was a mistake. You thought we said 75, but it was actually 15 or like 25. I tried to like bullshit him. He doesn't even take the piece of paper. He looks at me. He says, no, eat or pay. That guy would circle around my table to make sure I wouldn't try and sneak yakitoris into a bag to make sure that I wasn't going to cheat. He was like, you are going to pay me so much money because you're going to have to pay €2 for each yakitori, and that's a lot of fucking money. And that's how I'm going to get my revenge on you because you eat me out of business every single time you come with your friends. And at that moment, I decided, okay, now this is personal. I used to hit your place. Indeed, it wasn't very nice, but it's your business. You know, you have an orc, you can eat sushi. You have to be ready for people to show up and pick out. But now you try to prevent me from conning you out of the yakitoris. This is personal. This is personal business. I sit my ass down. I plop up a big ass glass of water in front of me, and I just go down to business. Like there was no pleasure. There was nothing involved in it but duty and the desire to get revenge and to win. I just start to eat yakitori after yakitori, and I eat one water. I barely chew. Like I'm a pelican at this point. I'm just like getting it down, getting it down, getting it down. And I remember the guy again would circle around my table, and I remember like his look on his face he was like, this motherfucker is going to do it. He's going to eat every single one of these fucking yakitoris. What a piece of shit. So at some point to pressure me, it was like, hey, we close at this time. You have to finish by this time or you pay. I'm like, yakitori, yakitori, yakitori. And I'm just eating and drinking, and it's horrible. I still to this day have no idea how I didn't like damage my intestines or stomach. But at the end of that, before they close, I finish the entire platter. There's not one yakitori left. Not one. I stand up because you don't. It's not America where they bring you the bill at the table. You pay at the exit of the place. I stand up. My friend, who was by the way in the bathroom this entire time, has puked all over the bathroom. It's completely disgusting. So now they have to clean that. He exits the bathroom without washing his hands. Very important. Goes to the counter where the guy has a spay, sticks his dirty puke hands directly into the little like bowl where they have candy for customers, grabs a handful of candy, and leaves without saying a word. The troll, like ultimate fucking troll move that put the boss and the guy who ran that place into a criminal rage, where he was like, okay, now like I'm going to kill you. Like I'm going to kill you guys. My friends pay up, I pay up, and trying to be nice. Again, I was not trying to be a dick. I told the guy, à la prochaine. And à la prochaine in French means see you soon. The guy looks at me dead in the eyes. He says, no. And from that day on, not my friends, not my friend who puked and who stole the candy, I was banished from that place. Meaning that every time I would show up, they would tell me no. They would refuse business. They would be like, no, yakitori boy, no. And so I never went back to that place for years and years and years. And here's the funniest part. I went back to that place years later because this entire thing happened before America. After I went to America, I came back to that place. I walk into the place. I look completely different, except I'm fatter. And as I get in, there's the clink of the door, and the guy who is still the same guy looks up from his little tin, and he sees me, and the look of dread and daunting on his face, who is like, he's back, and he's even fatter than last time. He's going to eat even more yakitoris. And we connected in that moment. And in that moment, I realized, oh, I'm still banned. And so I left. And I have never returned. I have no idea if this Port Royal sushi place is still there. But yeah, that was the time where I was banned from eating sushi because I had too much yakitori. Why did you guys ask for 75 thinking you could do it? Because technically, if everyone eats 15, it's easily doable. But if you have people who eat 2 or 3 and then they leave to smoke, then that compounds. And now I have to eat it with my friend. He goes to puke and I'm left with like 35. But I did it. So that was a good story. So that was social awkwardness. Let's do the other social awkwardness ones while we're at it. So since we're talking about food, let's talk about Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, I know that I'm going to surprise Americans, is not a thing outside of America and Canada because other countries didn't invade and kill indigenous people and then try to like revamp the story as like, oh, they gave us corn, we're friends. So we don't do that. I say that because I've had many Americans surprised at this fact where they're like, "Hey, are you going to like celebrate Thanksgiving at home?" And I'm like, "No, because I'm French." And they're like, "And?" Like Americans really think that their culture is like global and it applies to everyone. But anyways, as someone who was French in America, a very good experience that I've had is that Americans are very nice and they love to invite you to Thanksgiving. And so I was invited many, many times. And two of these occurrences were absolutely cringe fests because of my behavior. The first one was there was like this Korean girl that had approached me and some of my friends, and she wanted to invite us to Thanksgiving. I'm showing up to this place with stereotypes in my head because I don't know, call me a bigot. When a Korean girl invites me to her home, I expect to find Korean parents. Instead, I find two people who are whiter than me, and I look at this and I'm like, what happens exactly here? That's already a faux pas. Apparently, you're not supposed to point out the fact that someone is adopted the second one of you meeting them. So the parents now awkwardly have to explain to me that they essentially went to Korea to shop for babies, which apparently is a thing. It's very practical. You go into a country, you install democracy, and then you can get like babies from there and oil. It's something that friends should do more often. But anyways, so they got the baby from Korea, and now the baby is American. And we are at this family, and we're eating. And one, their house is really weird. This is something that is not going to speak to many of you, but there was a serial killer in Chicago whose name I forgot, who had built an entire hotel that was essentially a torture hotel where he would essentially have like back rooms and places where he would like torture people. Their house was built after that hotel, meaning that the guy had like created like secret passageways. H. Holmes, thank you. He had created secret passageways and like fake doors and like corridors and shit like this for the kids. Yes, for the kids. Really, really weird. So, anyways, that was that. And then something else that I found afterward that connected was that the reason why I was invited was not because they were trying to be nice, they were trying to recruit me in their court. So essentially, what they had done is that they had tasked their Korean adopted daughter to go on campus to befriend people and then invite them to their house to convince us to join their specific court of Christianity that was essentially like not Jehovah's Witnesses, like essentially like Scientology or something like this. So this, of course, dampened the mood of the meal because now I'm not just there to like enjoy American culture or to like meet new people or to make friends. I'm here because you're trying to recruit me in your bullshit court. And so that quickly soured the ambiance because me being me, I told them that I didn't believe in their bullshit and I made fun of their belief. I don't remember what they believe, something about a Martian and plagues of gold. I don't remember exactly. It was stupid. And so I told them it was stupid. I told them, at least if you're going to believe in a religion, believe in one that has existed for 1,000 years, not one that was made in like 1975. They didn't appreciate that, and so the girl drove us back home, and she never spoke to me again. So that wasn't a big loss. But that was Thanksgiving number one. This one was just weird. The second one was with a Mexican family. I spoke to you guys about the gay colleague that I had who happened to be Mexican and who was very nice. And so, one of my first years in America, he invited me to have Thanksgiving at his family. And it was a typical Mexican American Thanksgiving. They watched football, they made typical Mexican dishes. It was actually lovely. The thing is that I've never been exposed to Mexican culture and Mexican food in particular. It was my first time eating actual traditional Mexican food. And so, when I was presented with what I believe is called a tamales, I think it's a tamales, and you'll correct me. I know I have Mexicans on the chat. Well, I ate them whole because I had never seen a tamales before. And so I was not given the instructions. And so I just swallowed two whole. And after that, I saw other people eating tamales and they would remove the corn that is around them. And I thought to myself, did I just swallow whole things that you're supposed to unwrap first? And no one told me anything? And now I became like the gringo that swallowed two tamales whole. Like again, how did this not damage my stomach? I have no idea. But to this day, it's still something that makes my wife laugh because she's like, "How the fuck do you see a tamales and not realize that you're supposed to like remove the husk?" I don't know. It was social pressure, I guess. So that was the second Thanksgiving. Yeah, that's pretty much that for the social awareness story. Is great. All right, next stories. We have the job working for the French government, the wife story, childhood anecdotes, and the many times I almost died. We're making good time. French government, French government. I think we're going to do the French government because I still have a lot of energy, and the French government story needs a lot of energy. And then we'll do the wife story, okay? French government and then wife story. Let me blow my nose if you don't mind. Okay, I'm back. Yes. Okay. You do mind? Well, then leave, I guess. Okay, so French government. This one is also very important, and I have to tell it slow because there are many details so that you can understand the full extent of the bullshit that I witnessed. All right, so first and foremost, why did I work for the French government? I worked for the French government because of nepotism, because my dad worked for a branch of the Ministry of Culture, and it was affiliated with something called, can I say it? Yeah, I'll say it. It doesn't matter. He was affiliated with something called Paris Atelier. And essentially what they do is they organize lessons, like art lessons in Paris. And it's like huge. They organize hundreds of lessons. It makes millions of euros, even more. So it's a big thing, right? It's in a sense, it's a publicly funded program that people can enroll into. My dad, via nepotism, got me a very cushy summer job where instead of working in the field or in construction, I was in an office with the AC going, and I was essentially just helping people enroll into these classes. So it was easy as fuck. On top of that, the money was good. And when I mean good, in that summer job, I made 1,500 euros after taxes. That's insane. Like there are people in France who have a diploma and an actual job who make less than that. So it was way overpaid for what I was doing. And so for 3 months, I got almost 5,000 euros. And by the way, this is the money that I was going to use to fund my trip to America. So it was very important. So thank you, Dad. For once, you did something good for me. You found me a job. The first time I show up to the job, I'm told that I have to go to this place that is by the river or whatever the fuck. I go there, I meet a bunch of people, they give me the assignment. What age were you? I was 19. They give me the assignment. And I found out something even better. Like it keeps getting better. I'm not going to work there. This is the main branch. I'm going to work in a sub branch. And guess what the sub branch is? It's literally 5 minutes away from where I live by foot. I just have to go out of my apartment, cross a park, and I'm right there. So I can, and I start working at 9 a.m. So I can wake up every single day at 8:45 and make it in time for the start of my shift. And if that's not amazing, I don't know what is. I can also go home to have my lunch break. So it's literally the perfect job. And at this point, you're going to tell me, NH, what is the kicker? Well, the kicker was the type of people who worked here. Because if you have a place that's super cushy, that takes no efforts, who is going to work here? Well, only people who are lazy as fuck. And so when I show up and I meet the people who work there, one of the ladies that works there worked for 2 days and then she went on leave because her daughter broke her arm. And to this, I have a question to her. Why do you need to be on leave? Your daughter broke her arm, not you. She left for 2 months on leave, paid. For the people who say, oh, America doesn't have enough social programs and social assistance and blah, 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 I agree. But France is the exact opposite, and it's the exact opposite extreme, and it's just as fucking bad. Because people can just take breaks and leave and be paid for no fucking reason. She didn't even have to justify it. So this girl leaves, meaning that now I have to do her job. That is the nature of government job. Now let's talk about the boss. Because every single branch of Paris Atelier, that was a sub-branch of the Ministry of Culture, of course, has to have a territory. So they have a sector, and every sector has a boss, a head of the sector. What does the head of the sector do? I don't fucking know, because in 3 months at that job, I never saw that woman do a single thing. She would show up at 10 a.m. So an hour late, she would have me open the office. From 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., she would listen to jazz, take phone calls, and be on Facebook. And at 2 p.m., she would leave. So she would work 4 hours. in the day. Guess how much she was making a year? 100K? More. More than 100K. 150K less. 135, 125, close. A little bit lower than 125. 120. Pedro, you got it. She was making 120,000 euros a year. This is insane for France to start with. And on top of that, she wasn't really working. And what I understood is that essentially the way these government jobs work is you have to just stick with it. So you stick with it for years and years. She had been in government for 40 years. And eventually, you get a position that is a bullshit position, but because you have seniority, they are forced to pay you a lot. And so this woman had it made. Before, after tax, it was before tax. Before tax. But essentially, yeah. So that was her job. She was doing nothing. And the only real role that we had in this like little building was that we took in people to do the registration, which is something that can be done online. So the entire process cost the taxpayer millions and could have been replaced by a website that anyone with PHP knowledge can make in like 24 hours. Or you could just have something like a platform online where people go, select their classes, put their credit card, and there. But of course, no, because bureaucracy wouldn't survive if we allowed things to work properly. So instead, what people would need to do is, if they wanted a specific class, they would have to travel to our office with cash. We only accepted cash. And they would like hand over a dossier, so a file with their pictures, informations, and the cash. And then I, with the big I, would have to painstakingly go into the computer, type their fucking name, enroll them in the class, which is something they could do themselves, and then take the cash. The amount of times I dreamed about robbing this place. Because guess where they stored all of the cash? They stored all of the cash down in a safe. They stored it in essentially what was like a closet with no key. They essentially just put the envelopes there. At all times, there was tens of thousands of euros in here. And my brain, my criminal brain was like, dude, just fucking take it. They don't have CCTV. No one would know. Like, just fucking take it. And the fact that we never got robbed is fascinating to me because it was like you could walk in. So that was like the scope of the job. Now, something that I'm not very proud of is that because I was at this job, I became like the people that work there, and I became very lazy. So I started to take 2-hour lunch breaks, and I started to arrive 25 minutes late, etc., etc. And granted, not great of me. But what really boiled my piss is that I vividly remember at some point this woman that left for 2 months on paid leave because her daughter broke her arm. She showed back up, and after like 2 hours of working with me, she told me, hey, you know, you really let yourself go. Like, you've gotten really lazy. And I just wanted to tell her, where have you been for the past 60 days exactly? Because, like, pretty sure you were just lazing at home by pretending to take care of your daughter. So what the fuck is this? Like, at least the boss, she knew she was a lazy piece of shit. She was a boomer, but at least she didn't get on my case. She was like, yeah, just you collect your paycheck and do nothing. That's the motto here. That's what we do. So that was one of my job, one of the description of my job. But I was also what we call l'homme à tout faire. L'homme à tout faire means that essentially when there was a task to be done, I would do the task. So at some point they had an event, like an art event in a gallery. They needed security, so they put me in a tuxedo and I was security. So I was just sitting there with my arms crossed. Okay, I didn't have a license for security. I didn't have a weapon or anything. If something happened at that moment, I was completely worthless. At another time, they used me as a guiding dog. I shit you not, at some point, someone showed up with a blind kid, gave me the kid, and said, here, guide the kid through the city. Isn't there like laws against it, like disability stuff in place? Why am I now becoming a golden retriever? This is not in the contract that I signed. But at the end of the day, you do what you're told. And so for a full day, I spent like just roaming the streets of Paris, holding the hand of a blind kid and like doing sightseeing, pun not intended, because what the fuck was he even doing? He can't see. Um, Now, to give you more context, because the image is humorous, when I say kid, the kid was 16, but he was 6 feet 4, black, super muscular, from the dom tom. The reason why I say black is not to be racial for no reason. It's because try to picture this. You have some white guy who is holding the hand of a 6 feet 4, like, monster of a man who is like essentially like an NBA player, and just like guiding him around the city. Like, we got so many weird looks because they clearly look like the set of a movie or like some weird fetish. But I did my best with the guy. Like, I tried to, like, I didn't understand like the point of what I was even doing. Am I showing you around? You can't see. And I was, okay, admittedly very bad at my job as a guide dog. I wasn't trained properly. I wasn't a good service dog. So at one point we took the subway, and I forgot that he was like blind, sort of. And in the metro of Paris, you have these like it's like, how can I even say that? Like, it's a carpet that moves. Like, you're standing on it and it moves you forward. Like, you have them in airports as well. I don't know the term that you use, the technical term of that, but they're everywhere in Paris. People say Oliva and Maria. Fuck you, because I'm Maria in this case. It's not an escalator. It's flat. It's the flat thing to make you move faster. Anyways, the thing with these is that if you have eyes to see, oh yeah, conveyor belt, they're fairly predictable because you see where they start. But when you don't see, so like very often the kid would eat shit because he would take a first step into something that's accelerating, so he would fall backwards. And it happened to him like 5 times. And he would like get mad at me. And I was like, well, okay, yeah, I guess I should warn you, but like I keep forgetting because what we're doing makes no sense. And then at the end of this entire thing, I was to bring him back to like this place where they store blind people, I suppose, a school for the blind. And I remember, it's like, this shows that I'm a bad person. I remember bringing him to that place and being like, there. And I remember the guy like letting go of my hand and like walking towards the place. And I remember thinking, dude, you can see. Like, you're clearly going towards the door. You're not like aiming for the wall. You can see. Like, what role did I even serve this entire day? And on top of that, he didn't even say thank you. And I think that's very rude. To connect to an experience that I've also had with someone with a handicap that pissed me off. I had a teacher in high school that was in a wheelchair, and I thought that he couldn't walk, which I suppose is the logical conclusion to make when someone uses a wheelchair. And then one day I remember we're in the plane to go to India, and I see him walk down the aisle. And I remember the look of shock of everyone of the class looking at each other like, do you see this shit? This guy has been in a wheelchair for 2 years. He can walk. He was walking unaided, like his legs were moving. And I found out later on that the guy was not paralyzed. His legs worked perfectly fine. He got into a car, so he got into a motorcycle accident when he was younger. That was his fault. He was in a coma. He had to go through rehab, and he decided he didn't want to. So he decided, no, rehab is too hard. My legs could walk. Like, I could get them to walk again 100%. I'm just going to be in a wheelchair. And from that moment on, I lost all respect for that guy because I was like, what the fuck? Like, what type of man makes that choice? Think about all of the people who are stuck in wheelchairs who don't have that choice, who would die to have legs that work. And you had that, and you were just like, oh, fuck that, dude, it's too hard. Huh? Anyways, so that was the French government job. Do you have anything to add? Yeah, no, that was pretty much that. Yeah, so lots of corruption. Now you understand why I don't like government. And next, I say the wife story. So this one, before it starts, I have to matrix myself mentally to make sure that I don't speak of any places. No places, no description. Okay. The wife story. The reason why I call it the wife story is that there are many stories that I've had where my wife is involved that I'm not allowed to tell you guys because she said no. She eventually vetoed the stories, and she has the right to veto. She's part of the story. This one, she was fine enough and nice enough to share it, even though she is sort of the butt of the joke. So, but she also is amazing in the story. So I guess it's not too bad. So the wife story. What is the wife story? The wife story is that we eventually had to move to the place where we live now, and we had to move our entire life across the country. And to do that, well, you have to take the big ass couch that you bought that you thought was comfortable, that now you have to all around. That's really hard. You have to move the gym that you built in a garage that is $10,000 worth of equipment, but also is thousands of pounds. How do you move that now? It's horribly difficult. So we had to find a way to get a truck and a moving company to do all of that for us. Elle parle le français, elle y travaille. To do all of that for us. And to do this, we had someone else, a close friend of ours, who recommended a moving company, and they set up everything for us. So we had nothing to do. That was very great. And the day comes closer, the day comes closer. I organize in my own head the way it's going to work, because our responsibility is going to help them pack the truck, organize the truck, and then they drive the truck, because we're also in a situation where we have to drive the car. This is the logistics of moving. We have to find a way to get the car there. So we have to drive and follow the truck. They meet us or we meet them at the new house, and we take everything out, and that way it works perfectly. We actually had an issue, a rich people's issue, I guess, although rich we are not, with having two cars. We had a shitty ass beater car that I drove, and a nicer car that we bought like used that she drove. The problem was fixed by the fact that a tree fell on my car. So one day we show up to the parking and a tree just fell across my car. So that car was donezo. So good. Now we only have one car. So we prepare logistics, packing, etc., so that you can have the move to be as less stressful as possible. Every move is going to be stressful by definition, but to make it as good as possible. And to do so, we start to pack. And we start to pack, and the day is coming closer, and we hear nothing from the company, which you tell me, I think is weird, right? I hired you, I paid a deposit for your team. It's 24 hours before you're supposed to show up to my door, and I still don't know where you are or if you're going to show up. We are supposed to move on the weekend. On the Friday, we still haven't heard of them. And to me, that's unacceptable, right? You should warn us in advance. But eventually, Friday night, we get told, hey, we're going to show up on the Sunday morning, and we are going to send two guys. And alarms and alerts go off in my hand, and I think, this is weird. Why did they wait for so long? Why does the person that I'm speaking of doesn't really seem able to tell me what type of truck is going to show up? They're not able to give a description. Who is going to show up? What are the names? How many there are? Like, what the fuck is happening? So I do what any sensible person would do. I Google the company. And guess what I find? In the reviews, I find only 1-star reviews of people who say this company is a scam. What they do is they are hiring other people, other movers. They are outsourcing, and they are collecting the money. The movers that come to collect are not professional. They treat your stuff like garbage. On top of that, sometimes they hold your stuff hostage. So a review that made me lose my shit because I was so afraid it would happen to us was a story of a family that paid that company. The company came with these movers, packed the truck, left, and then kept the content of the truck and asked for a ransom. So they blackmailed the company, the family, saying, we have your stuff, and if you want your stuff, you pay X more, which sounds illegal, but technically can be part of the contract, as in, we have done the first half of the contract, you didn't read the contract. For us to complete the contract, you have to pay more. And it was like tens of thousands of dollars. So when I saw that, I freaked out. I also found out that sometimes what the movers would do is they would show up, they would take all of your stuff, so out of your house, they would put them in their truck, and then before leaving, they would tell you, hey, if you want us to complete the move, you have to pay $3,000 extra right now. And if you refused, what they would do is they would take all of your shit and throw it on the curb. So now all of your stuff is dirty, has touched the outside, and anyone can just come collect it, and you're left like an asshole because you don't have anyone to help you move back in. So for me, I was thinking, oh, I have tens of thousands of dollars of gym equipment. I don't want my gym equipment to be lost. I don't want my shit to be lost. We are not doing that. So what I do is I ask my lovely wife and I say, baby, did we pay these people already? And she tells me, yes, we did. We paid a deposit. How much did we pay? We paid a few $1,000s. Oh, okay. So they know what they're doing. The entire company runs a system where they know that what they're doing is bullshit, so they charge upfront as much as possible. This also means that Eventually, when I looked them up even more, I found out that they're actually being shut down, meaning that the company is actually being liquidated by the Department of Internal Affairs of whatever, because they have so many suitcases, sorry, so many lawsuits against them that they are forced, in a sense, to like go bankrupt. And we hired these people and we paid a retainer, and now they're going to show up and collect our shit. So I say, fuck that. I take the phone and I call the woman on the phone and I'm like, hey, I went and I saw your reviews and the fact that you're being sued. Don't show up tomorrow. Like this is on the Saturday, by the way. And we're supposed to move on Sunday. Don't show up tomorrow. Like don't bother. And the woman is trying to play dumb, like, oh, but I don't understand. We're a reputable company. I'm like, dude, you're being sued by 78 people. You have like a class action lawsuit on your asses. The federal government is shutting you down. Her tone of voice switched. She was like, yep, well, I'm not refunding you. You're not seeing your money back. So I was like, we'll see that. We'll see about that. So I hang up. I call the credit card company. I tell them, hey, this is a scam. Look at all of this proof. Please freeze the transfer of $1,000 or whatever. Like, I don't want to pay these people. God bless America. In America, you can do that. In France, I would be just lésé. I would have lost €1,000. But here I was able to get that back. Okay, so now that's the first part of the story taken care of. We almost lost everything that we own, because if they had a truck full of very expensive gym equipment, because keep in mind this is after the pandemic, so gym equipment is super fucking expensive, they would have known what they had and they would have made me pay to get it back. And I would have had no recourse, because what do we do? Call the police? Hello, police. There's a truck somewhere in America that has my shit. You're fucked. So we avoided that. But now we're in a situation where we have to hire another moving company. And at this point, I'm paranoid. So I tell my wife, no, we're going to do everything ourselves. We are going to rent a moving truck ourselves and we're going to drive it ourselves. The place where we used to live to the place where we live now was 11 to 12 hours of driving. My wife, being the trooper that she is like, okay, we will be doing this. And on top of that, I will be driving. So we get a truck, we rent a truck, we rent movers, we got a U-Haul, and we got all of our shit. The U-Haul shows up to my gym. I put all of my stuff at the back because I'm not stupid. I understand how physics work. Then we put all of our like luggage and all of like the couches and shit. And the movers are really, really good. And they're really, really good because they're both on cocaine. They're both on so much cocaine and they're constantly going like this and sniffing. And my wife tells me, hey, like, you know why he's like this, right? Like, these two guys are sniffing powder. That's why they're so good. At the end of it, we gave them a very good tip, and the look on the guy's face when he saw that $50 bill, like, you could tell he was like, yep, that's going straight up my nose. And so they both left. We pack the truck, get in the truck, we get like 5 Subway sandwiches, and we're like, we're driving. It's noon at this point, and we're going on the road for at least 10 hours. And we're going, and the drive is like uneventful. My wife is amazing, very safe driver. She drives the truck. She prevents me from driving because she knows that I drive like an assassin, and she gets very anxious when I'm behind the wheel, and rightfully so. So if you give me a truck, forget about it. It's Final Destination all over again. And so we drive across the country and we drive across the country, and eventually we get close to our final destination. I said final destination twice. It's funny that happened twice. Now we have to collect the car that my wife left at the airport. And the way we're going to separate the tasks is, because she doesn't trust me with the truck, she's going to drive the truck to the house. She's going to drop me off at the airport. I will collect the car at the airport. I will drive to get the keys downtown of the city, because we don't have the keys. Then I'll drive and meet her at the house. Perfect plan, right? Perfect plan. We both go on our way. I'm in the car. For people who watch One Piece, I'm going to use the analogy and then I'll explain to you what it means. You see Zoro in One Piece? I'm Zoro times 1,000. I have no sense of direction. The only way for me to know where I'm going is if I have a GPS, and even that is not certain, or if I'm going through a road that I've went through already like 15 times. That I can do. But outside of that, impossible. Like, I am horrible at this. I keep getting lost where I live, and I've lived there for 2 years. And my wife is like, how is that possible? I don't know. You married me. It's your problem now, not mine. So I'm driving, I'm lost. The city is complex. It's the type of city that if you miss your turn, now it's like up your ass. You have to do 15 more minutes instead of just finding another exit. It's horrible. I break every single rule I can. Like, the GPS is like, you're going to have to do a 15 minutes detour to take that left. And I'm like, nope, I see that left. It's right there. It's a no left turn, up your ass. I'm taking that left. Don't give a fuck. I'm taking that left. I'm getting lost up hills, down hills. I'm like, I'm gonna die. Like, this is how I die. But eventually, I managed to find downtown. And when I start driving downtown, I get a very distinct sensation, one that I had felt before. It feels like I just crossed the bridge. It feels like this is past the bridge. It's close to 2 a.m. There are a lot of people standing up and being outside and doing nothing and looking at my car go by. Lots of bars, lots of drunk people. Pretty sure this is the ghetto. And I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would bet this is the ghetto. So now, click, click. I close both doors and I'm like, don't stop at red lights, don't stop at stops. I finally arrive at the building that contains the keys. Of course, it's closed, it's 2 a.m., but they did something that they do in B&Bs or whatever the fuck, where they have this little box and you type a code and the box opens and you have your keys. Locating the box took me 15 minutes, but it was at the back of the building. So I approached the box and it's like a box affixed on a brick wall, and the brick wall is like ancient. So first I take a piss. Very important for the story. I take a piss. At the end of the day, it was a disgusting neighborhood, so I was actually adding value to the neighborhood. I type the code and I take my keys. And when I type the code, I start to hear like un bruit de bruissement, like above my head. But I'm not really paying attention because I'm focused on the code. And when I go to grab my keys, I see movement. Like I see movement on the wall in my peripherals. And I look up. The wall is covered in roaches who heard and felt the impact of my fingers tapping the code, and who smelt, I believe, my piss, and who are just coming out in droves because they are thinking, oh, thirsty, delicious drink. Hundreds of roaches just pouring out of that hole like a sea. I hate roaches. I hate roaches so much. So I see that, I'm like, ugh. And you have to also like put yourself in my shoes. I just collected a key for my new house that is like clearly in a horrible neighborhood in a building infested by roaches. Like, what does that say about the house I'm about to drive to? Because, and again, my fault. My wife handles this shit. Like administrative stuff, she handles. She found the house. I don't know shit about the house or where it is. I grab the key, go back to the place. As I start driving, I get a phone call from my wife. I pick up. Hello, baby. How are you doing? Ah, something happened. If you're a man and you hear that on the phone, you know that something happened is not a good thing. It's not something happened, I won the lottery. It's something happened and you're going to have to fix it. So I'm like, okay, what happened? She tells me, well, to make it easier for you to move the stuff tomorrow, I decided to park the truck directly in the driveway, but I drove on the grass and now the truck is stuck. And she tells me she tells it to me like this: the truck is stuck, and that to me means very little. Like, what does it mean? The truck is stuck. She won't explain. So I drive there, thinking that it's something pretty minor, and I'm going to be able to fix it. I start to arrive to where we live, and the closer I get, the more I start to see crackheads, like essentially zombies, like people who are on the sidewalk but they have nowhere to go, and they have never had anywhere to go, and that's why they're crackheads. And I'm thinking, oh, that looks a lot like past the bridge. I keep driving. I start to see garbage, straight up garbage on the ground outside. Raccoon, roaches. I'm like, what a nice environment to raise kids. And so the more I'm driving, the more I'm thinking, we live in the ghetto. Like, this is the fucking ghetto. I arrive, park the car, get out. The truck is sideways. This is what she meant by stuck. Sideways, meaning that she attempted to pull into the driveway, but the truck being super heavy with all of my gym equipment, it literally fell sideways, and it rested on a pillar. You know these like wooden pillars where you have like electricity and stuff? The pillar by the house, it was like leaned on it. So now, if you try to pull the truck out, you're going to make the pillar fall on the house. So it's stuck. It can't go anywhere. And I see that, I'm like, It's 3 a.m. We've been driving and walking for like 15 hours. And this is me being a bad husband, by the way. Don't do that. I just looked at her and I was like, I love you, but this is your mess. So you fix it. And I went to bed. Another additional bullshit was that we didn't have water. They cut the water, so couldn't drink, couldn't take a shower. So I went to bed disgusting and sweaty, but I was like, I'm not dealing with that shit. She had to stay up and get a guy to like the AAA guys to like hook the truck and like pull it because it couldn't be driven to get it out of the way. And they came at like 5 a.m. So she was up from 3 to 5. But then the next day I redeemed myself because I took care of most of it. So like I was the guy who handled the moving guys, and we moved all of the shit, and we like stuffed the gym stuff back in the gym, etc. But an interesting way to move, right? I've never had a good moving experience, but this one was the worst. Yeah, so that was the story. We are almost out of stories, guys. We have we have two types of story left. We have the many times I almost died, and we have a few anecdotes that I have as a kid. So which ones do you want first? Okay, so people are saying death. Well, if you like death so much, let's do death. So death. The many times I almost died. Let's start with almost died playing football. This one is a doozy. So when I was a teenager, I was obsessed with the story I Shield 21. And it's a story I spoke about on the channel in the past. And it's a story about American football. So unlike my fellow Europeans, I played American football and not soccer. You can go take a piss. Just take your headphones with you. And so American football is not a safe sport. Right? They have a huge issue with concussions. Like it's not something that you play thinking I'll be just fine once I'm done. I knew that more or less, but I wasn't aware of the risks. The team that I played for was the best team in Paris, which is not saying a lot. It's essentially saying that like your team is the best basketball team as the local YMCA, because the level of American football in France is very, very low. To the point that a guy that was 275 pounds on our team was the biggest guy on the team. Like he was the biggest guy in the O line. Where in America, 275 pounds, you're a linebacker. You're not on the O line, or maybe you're a defensive end. But people are like kids are much bigger. That was our like top kid. He was that big. So he was around like 120 kilograms. The team in itself was made of a lot of very interesting characters, but I'm going to tell you about them later. The only one that you have to know about is called Mounir. I cite him because Mounir is now a very common name in France. So Mounir was a psychopath, straight up. He was a very short kid, not muscular at all. He just enjoyed hurting people. And that made him a very good defensive player because when he hit you, he tried to hurt you. And so his tackles were pretty fucking lethal. The issue with Mounir is that Mounir had a tough time distinguishing between enemies and allies. And so he would hurt you the same way that he would hurt anyone. So you would be on the same team and like do a drill, and he would like run into you trying to kill you. The thing is that this got him into a lot of trouble because one time he did that with a coach. So there was a coach that was like a wide receiver coach. He was a defensive player. The coach caught a ball and he tackled him so fast that he broke his ribs. And so Mounir got kicked out of the team, of course, because you just don't do that to your coaches. But before he could get kicked out, he did that to me too. So at one point, we're running a drill. He's running towards me with the ball, and I have to like sort of tackle him. And wouldn't surprise you too much to hear that I am a lousy football player because I am not aggressive. By nature, I'm fairly pacifist, like non-violent, call it whatever you want. Unless you're actually getting in my face, I'm not going to fight you because I don't have the type of mentality of personality that makes one want to be aggressive towards others in that fashion. And so that made me also a bad defensive player because my way of tackling people is I would allow people to run into my chest, I would wrap them up, and then I would judo throw them. So I would do a sacrifice throw every single tackle that I did, which is not very effective at all. You're supposed to run into people, not let people run into you. But with that guy, the issue is that I couldn't really do that because if you try to do that with him, he would just like run through you. So I had to find another way. The other way I found is face mask. So a face mask, for those who don't play American football, is you grab the grill and you pull it down. And since the body follows the head, the guy falls. I do it to him one time, and the coaches don't catch me. It's illegal, by the way. The next time we run the drill, he comes to me and he wants revenge. He wants revenge for the face mask. And he does it in a way that should have gotten him time in prison, because what he does is, instead of allowing me to grab the face mask, he uses his face mask as almost like a baseball bat or like something to ram into my face. And so he aims for the space. So the helmet is here, the face mask is here. He aims for the space where I'm not protected, and he jams his face mask into me as strongly as possible, snapping my head back and concussing me immediately. Like, it concussed me in that instant. And I remember sitting on my ass, looking up, and I was so concussed that I could see the stars. You know, people say like, "Oh, I was seeing stars." There was a blue sky on that day, but in my head, through my eyes, it was dark, entirely dark, and I could see the stars. Now, maybe it's like just an illusion, but that's what I could see. After that, darkness. I don't remember anything. And then I just wake up. And I wake up on the field, on my feet, playing. So I wasn't in an hospital or like in an ambulance. I'm actively participating in a play. And I remember like being like, what the fuck? So I play, the play ends, and I run to a guy who's on my team, on my squad, and I'm like, hey, have you noticed me acting weird or anything like during the play? And the guy looks at me and he tells me, dude, it's the third time you've asked me this. You really need to go see a coach because there's something wrong with you. So essentially, the guy concussed me. I passed out, but my body kept moving. My body just was on autopilot and kept playing. And then eventually I snapped back into reality, asked the guy, hey, am I weird? And then I snapped back into the concussed state, went back to playing, and I did that 3 times. So after the third time, I go up to a coach and I'm like, coach, like, I think I have a concussion. And of course, this being friends, there was no concussion protocol. So the guy essentially just like made me sit on the side and did nothing. He didn't call an ambulance. He didn't do anything. And at the end of the practice, he let me go back home on my own without anyone with me. And you know what happened? Prends un sucre, bâtard. And you know what happened to me? Well, I lost consciousness again. So I woke up in the subway and I didn't know where I was. So I was sitting with like, I remember, là c'est à l'ancienne de Zinzin. J'avais un sac Tati. Tati is like a store like Aldi. I had a big ass kaba, a sack where I would put like my helmet and everything. It was on my lap, and I remember like just like I remember being in the subway and not knowing where I was, not knowing where to come out, like where I even lived. And I think I spent a few hours in the subway because I lost the cognitive ability to figure out like where I was, what directions were, like where I lived. It was horrible. But eventually I made it back to my house. I, of course, never told my mom because she would have made me quit football and I didn't want to. So I lied to her. For like 2 weeks afterwards, I had horrible headaches and memory loss issues. And then eventually it went away. Now, do I still have sequels or like things like scars in my brain from this? It's possible. All I know is that this is the reason why I no longer played football, because I was like, yeah, that shit is dangerous as fuck. And at the end of the day, my brain is very vital to me. I don't want to develop Parkinson's, so I'm not doing that shit. But the interesting thing is that the other people on the team, all of them also got concussed, but it didn't seem to matter to them. Like they didn't really care. So we had Munir, who was a complete psychopath. We had Sasha, who was also a complete psychopath, but he was a little bit nicer. We had one guy whose big joke was that he asked people who, how can I put it to be as poetic as possible? His big shtick was he would wait for the end of practice. He would walk into the practice, into the locker room when everyone was sweaty and like ready to take showers. He would take down his football pants and he would dangle his balls and say, and I quote in French, "Qui est chaud pour me sucer les couilles?" Which means, who is up to licking my balls? That was every Friday. He did that joke every single Friday. No one took him up on the offer, worldly enough, but that was quite the character. And that was the 275 pound guys, by the way. Then we also had a guy whose name was Giovanni. Giovanni. And you're thinking, Giovanni, a little mustache, like Italian, like brown skin, maybe like 170 pounds. Nope. Giovanni was a 6'5", 250 pounds dude straight from Africa that had immigrated from like Nigeria like 2 years ago, who barely spoke French, who the team had scouted because he was a complete locomotive on the field, meaning that our play was we give him the ball and he runs straight. And he was literally impossible to stop because in front of him was like 175-pound linebackers. The fuck are you going to do? He would just run through them. So most of our plays was that we give Giovanni the ball and he runs forward. We had the majority of the coaches were from African descent. They called him la créature. Like even they were like that guy. Like he's like he's from the jungle. Like he's from la brousse. Il disait ce mec-là il vient de la brousse. And he was actually very nice, but incredibly strong. Like I remember one time running a play against him, and I knew I couldn't block him. So what I did is I tried to like slip around him, and when I slipped around him, I turned my back, and I remember him running into me. And as I was like twisting my spine, he ran into me, and I remember feeling that my spine was like, "Yep, this is it. This is when I shatter into." Like it felt like my discs were going to separate. That's how much like kinetic force the guy had behind him when he ran. So it was I was very happy that I didn't have him in front of me when we played, because holy fuck, that wasn't a good time. But yeah, that was the team. That was an interesting mix of personalities, and the ones that made it were the ones who were like made for it, who were like aggressive as fuck, essentially pit bulls. So that's the football story. Let's talk about the time I almost died eaten by sharks. This is also a story that a lot of you guys have heard in the past, but it's very short and it's very it's crazy. So I want to share with you. So my mom, when I was 11, took us to the Caribbeans, or I think it was Les Seychelles, to have a trip. And it was a trip just the two of us, but it was like a group trip because it was through her work. And so we were with a bunch of other people. And one of the activities that we did was turtle seeking. So turtle seeking means you're in the sea and you're looking for sea turtles. Sea turtles are fairly rare, so essentially you're just snorkeling, but in very deep water. And to do that, you have to have as much gear as possible because you're swimming against very strong current. You have to protect your skin from the sun to not get an insolation, etc., etc. For some reason on that day, I had decided that I, the 11-year-old, was going to swim. And I was going to swim with the people going to seek the turtles. The issue is that I had no palms, I had no bodysuit, I had nothing. I had goggles and a Speedo. That's all I had. Usually, when my mom was in her right mind, she would have told me, no fucking way, I only have one son, I don't want to lose you. But this day she had a few cocktails, she was feeling good, so she was like, yeah, go. Because she sort of felt like, well, he's going with adults. Like the group was made of adults, surely they're going to look after my son. Nope. We go into the water, and the entire group of adults, these assholes, they just leave. So they like book it. And since they have palms and they're bigger than me, well, they make great time and I can't catch up to them. And it's the water. It's not like I can go, excuse me, I'm 11 years old and you're abandoning me in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Can you come back? So they're just like gone. And now I'm in a conundrum because yes, I already told the story once on the channel. I'm in the middle of the ocean. The boat is far behind me. Whatever is in front of me is potentially turtles and most likely death. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to turn back and I'm going to return to the boat. That's the best thing I can do. I had just enough energy to make it back to the boat because anyone who has swum in the open sea will tell you, especially when the sun is beating, you get tired very, very fast. And I was realizing that I was actually going to die and drown. So I turned back and I start to swim. But I realized that there is something in the water that wasn't there beforehand. And that something is a form of pink mist. It's a pink mist that sort of like, in a sense, like appeared because it was pushed by the currents. And now it's in between me and the boat. And I don't know what this pink mist is. So I keep swimming. And when I get closer, I realize, oh, these are jellyfish. It's a school of jellyfish, of millions and millions of jellyfish. And jellyfish, what they do when you touch them is they sting. So I take a few swims, a few backstrokes, breaststrokes, I think, and I start getting stung. And I realize immediately, okay, like you're going to get an anaphylactic shock and die. You can't do that. So now I have to go around them. But if I go around them, it's miles and miles, and it's impossible, and I will die. So I'm thinking, okay, this is it. Like there is a certain peace and calmness that comes when you realize that you're cooked. And I was actually very calm. I wasn't panicking. But I got lucky because something that the guide told me came back into my head. The guide, when we went and we started to like set up for the turtle, he told us, look, there's a coral reef right there. avoid the coral reef because underneath the coral reef there are a lot of strong currents, and the sharks love the currents because that way the fish are sucked into the current and the shark just have to bite into them. This is my saving grace because the reefs emerge from the water. They're that big. And so I start swimming towards them. And indeed, they do emerge. And so I get on the reefs and I perch myself on the reef. And so I can finally like catch my breath. And I have my goggles on and everything. And I'm covered in water. And I'm like, the sun is beating down. And I realize I'm on a time crush here. But eventually I'm thinking they're going to realize that like I'm gone, I've been gone for a long time, and they can technically see me from the boat. So I'm like, hey, oh, hey, oh, I'm like making like noises and trying to get their attention. And eventually a tiny boat attached to the big boat separates itself and comes towards me. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm saved. But the guy doesn't come close. He stays at a distance. And I don't understand why. And when I'm like, what the fuck? He points down at the water. And what he points down to is the reef. Because the reef creates almost a labyrinth. And if he runs through it, he's just going to destroy his boat. So he has to, in a way, find like a way through the reef. I found it because I was 11 and very small. So for me, it was very easy to navigate, but not for him. But it's not the only thing that he's signaling. He's not just telling me, hey, I can't approach. He's also pointing at me. And I'll always remember he goes like this and then he does this. So he's like pointing at me and then pointing at his own body. And I'm like, what are you trying to tell me? So I'm like, me? So I like look at my body, but I don't see anything. Like I don't see anything that should alarm me. The only thing I see on me is water. And the guy is like, he keeps pointing at me and my body and then the reef. He's pointing like this down. I'm like, what is he trying to tell me? And then I do this with my hand and I look at my hand and I realize that it's covered in blue stuff. But it's funny, in my kid's head, I thought, oh, that's water. But that can be water. Water is not that dense and it's not blue. Water is transparent, even if you have blue goggles. So there's something else that I'm looking at here. And I go to remove my goggles and I realize at this point that I'm covered in blood because reefs are extremely sharp. And because of the adrenaline of the fear of death, when I climbed up the reef, I didn't feel it cutting me, but I was covered in tiny cuts. And these tiny cuts, because of the seawater, were essentially dripping blood everywhere. I was covered in blood. So now I'm thinking, great, I'm going to bleed out in the middle of the Indian Ocean. But I don't understand why the guy keeps doing this. Because I get the blood, but why this? And then it clicks. Underneath me is the reef. And the structure of the reef is the place where there are sharks. And right now, my blood is seeping directly in the water while they swim. So soon enough, these waters are going to be infested with sharks that are going to smell my blood and be very interested in this easy and sweet bite. Because I was chubby back then. So I was essentially like a seal. So the guy comes closer and closer with his boat, as close as he can, but he's still like at least 20 feet away. And he's gesturing to me towards me like, I can't come closer. The reef is too high. And so at this point, I don't have a choice. It's either I bleed out on this reef or I jump in the water and say, advienne que pourra. If I get eaten, I get eaten. Now, I didn't see like any. It would have been very cinematical for me to tell you guys I saw a shark's like fin and like circle me. I didn't see that, but I guess they were in the water. So I just said like fuck it. I jumped in the water. I swam with everything that I had. The guy grabbed me by the scruff of the neck, pulled me in the boat, and that was it. After that, I spent like 2 hours puking on the boat because I had like I was hit by the sun too hard. And the end of the story, and that's the beautiful end of the story, is that the group of these assholes that abandoned me to go see the turtles saw exactly zero turtles. But I, when I was puking like across like the boat par-dessus le bateau, at some point I'm puking and I'm crying into the waters, bitter tears of a child whose dream was shattered, and turtles just emerge from the water, and I get to have a good look at them, and they go back and they leave. But I almost died. That wasn't fun. Almost died by sharks. And then when I impaled my hand and almost bled to death. Yeah, I'm really not a smart person now I look back on it. So this one is very short as well, but it's going to tell you how obsessed and how stupid I can be sometimes. So I used to play basketball, but in France, to play basketball in a gymnasium, you have to be part of a team. And I wasn't part of a team. So I used to play street basketball. And the park where I used to play, these assholes would close for any reason. So they would close when it was too cold. They would close when it was raining. Sorry, I'm just playing the laptop. They would close when it was like a national holiday. Anyways, they would close all the time. And it personally pissed me off. So what I would do is that on these days, I would climb up the fence that surrounded the park, and I would, in a sense, make my way into the park with or without their approval. And eventually, more and more people seeing me do this started doing this themselves. And they realized that this was going to end up horribly. So, what they did is instead of just making a higher wall, they modified the nature of the fence. And the way they revamped the fence is they made spikes. So, before that, the fence was like square and you could easily grab it and rest on it. And after that, they essentially just sharpened the top. But from the bottom, you couldn't see it because from the bottom, before you climb, you just see the fence. It's still just the way it used to be. You don't see that the top is now a sharpened point. So one day I come. Yeah, well, the refocus of the camera is always something, isn't it? It does really feel like it's random. I made it worse. Like this. How do I look? How do I look, guys? I made it like a million times worse. Like you can see my calluses, yeah. How am I supposed to fucking fix this? Like, look at the calluses. Yeah, I did it. Okay, good enough. All right, good enough. So to go back to this, one day, one day I decide, fuck that, I'm going to like climb it. It was a national holiday, and I climbed the fence. And this was the day after they sharpened the points. So I climb the fence. I do my regular move where I put my hand on the fence and I move my body across. I like toss my hips across the fence and I climb down the fence. And when I do that this time, my hand that is resting on the pointy thing, when my weight goes on it for my hips to swing, the thing and the pole just goes straight through my hand. And so I have like now a nice little hole and I just land on the ground. And it's true with like gym injuries and it's true with anything that you do is stupid in life. After the injury, you have this moment where the pain has yet to set in and you realize how much of a dumbass you are. And it sets in that you're going to be injured for months and months and months. And I remember looking at my hand, looking at the hole in my hand and thinking, well, that's going to be interesting to play basketball with. And believe it or not, I still played basketball. Like I attempted to play basketball for 15 minutes with a hole in my hand until I realized, yeah, that's not a thing. And so I tried to leave. But here is the actual problem. I snuck into the place by climbing the fence. So how do I leave? There is no leaving. I have to climb the fence again. So I have to sacrifice another hand, and I'm not doing that. So what I did is I woke up the guy who like lived there, le concierge. Essentially, there was like, I'm bleeding out. Please let me out. And he was like, what the fuck are you doing here in the first place? It's closed. And I was like, yeah, I know I'm an idiot. Just let me go home. And I went home. So short story, but I still have the scar. I'm not going to show it to you because if I do, it's going to unfocus the camera. But if you look closely, there's something here. You can see it here. Yeah, that's the scar. What? We are almost at the end. So all of the stories of almost dying are done. And that is going to be the stories of almost are done. And then the last anecdote that I have for you is the time I almost killed a kid by pushing him off a cliff. Yeah, that's a great way to end the story time, I think. So, very short story. When I was a kid, I learned how to ski, and I was not very good at it, to be honest. And I remember one time I was skiing, and there was a kid next to me who was also skiing, as you would during a ski lesson. And we were near a cliff, and I let my inner thoughts like take over, and I thought to myself, how how much fun would it be if I pushed him down the cliff? And I was like apparently not very good with impulse control, so I just did it. And I essentially just shoved him and he just went tumbling down the cliff. And luckily for him, it was like a smooth cliff with like very few trees and rocks, so he didn't hit anything. He was stopped by the momentum of his own body. The issue is that my mastermind was that I was going to pretend that he like fell on purpose and then it would be my word against his. But the issue is that the second I pushed him and I looked up, the monitor, what we call a monitor, the instructor of the ski story was looking straight at me. And so he went to my money and was like, hey, I'm sorry, he's a sociopath and I'm not going to teach him anymore because he tried to kill a kid in front of me. So that was that. But that concludes the 3 hours story time. So I hope you guys had a good time. I know that I did. I will now return to working because I still have a lot of people to onboard for the Scroll Strategy. in terms of videos, so I already made the community post. I explained to you guys that I have a lot of things that I want to get settled so that I can return back to content creation. I'm really bad at doing two things at the same time. Now that I'm like in woke mode, it's really hard for me to tell myself, let's take 5 hours to make a video. I also feel bad because many people paid and are waiting to get what they paid for. And so I want to make sure that I end all of this. So in my head, the way I envision this, by the end of next week, everything will be settled and I will have my schedule back to be able to stream again, to be able to make videos again. So you can expect to start seeing videos again on the channel at the end of next week. I don't know which day, but I'm trying to get back as soon as possible. And then the streams will start again. Q&A streams in particular. So the next stream will be a Q&A stream 100%, and it will be in February. And then in March, I'm going to post the schedule again. You'll have your philosophy streams again, your physics streams again. I have a bunch of new ideas I want to do. I want to get back again to making videos because this is the entire point of the School of Strategy, is to do something that I love, to be able to make enough money to take care of my family, and also to keep making content. So I very much appreciate every single person who is still supporting on Coffee. That truly means a lot to me. And remember that if you need a custom program or stuff like this, you can always reach out to me on Coffee as well. But that's that. I'm going to, of course, post that video as a replay. It is exactly 3 hours and 30 minutes if we don't count the little hiccup with the previous stream. But I'm going to wish you a very good end of your night. Thank you for being here. Thank you for interacting. And I will see you very soon. Bisous. Mwah.